Chapter 2164. The Greater Void Shift was a teleportation method that only the top cosmic sector-level forces could master. It was a brilliant teleportation method that could cross the void. If Chernzong were to travel by himself, it would take a long time to reach the northern battlefront of the Northern Void from the Black and White Realm on the evanescent vessel. In the Northern Void, lines of light condensed out of thin air, as if they were weaving. They shuttled back and forth rapidly, weaving into the appearance of a glowing formation. A figure condensed out of thin air at the center of the array formation. It was Chernzong. The aura here is a little different. After the light around him dissipated, Chernzong looked around and felt that the aura here was different from that of the Eastern and Central Void. There seemed to be a little more murderous and smoky, as if there was a sense of urgency that made people nervous. Perhaps it was because this was the Northern Void and the Northern Battlefront was the front line against the barbarian race. Chernzong took out his astrolabe and checked it, locking on to his location and the Northern Battlefront. The Northern Battlefront was a general term. Strictly speaking, it was actually 3 star zones. One of the star zones had been completely occupied by the barbarian race. The other 2 star zones had been invaded by the barbarian race and occupied part of them. Those 2 star zones also had large armies of human cultivators guarding them, resisting the barbarian race's invasion. Therefore, the defense of those 2 star zones was the Northern Battlefront. Chernzong wanted to serve in the Northern Battlefront, so he naturally needed to have a clearer understanding of the Northern Battlefront. That way, he wouldn't make a mistake like barging into the barbarian race's camp without knowing anything. The 2 star zones were the Allo Star Zone and the Tai Monarch Star Zone. Whether it was the Allo Star Zone or the Tai Monarch Star Zone, the division of the battlefront was the same. Heavy Battlefront, Medium Battlefront, Light Battlefront. The so-called Heavy Battlefront was a battlefront at the Transcendent Realm level. Anyone below the Transcendent Realm would basically die if they entered. The Medium Battlefront was at the Origin Underworld level. As for the Light Battlefront, it was at the Dao Manipulation Realm level. Of course, even the Light Battlefront was very dangerous. A Dao Manipulation Realm cultivator could be killed if they were careless. Chernzong was in the Path Manipulation Realm, so he could only enter minor war zones. There was more than one light battle zone in the 2 star field. Instead, there were dozens of them. They were divided into number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. It was easier and more intuitive to name them this way. There were fewer moderate war zones, but there were still more than 20 of them in total. The severe war zones were the least, with less than 10 of them. Similarly, they were all divided by number 1, number 2, and number 3. I'm lucky, Chernzong said to himself after looking at the astrolabe. Due to the Greater Void transference of the Will Heavenly Palace, it was impossible to lock on to the exact location of the teleportation. The place where Chernzong appeared was not far from Allo Star Field. If he used the Evanescent to fly, it would only take about 10 days. When the escapee appeared, Chernzong immediately activated it and set off. Every disciple of Will Heavenly Palace was required to serve at the northern front lines at least once. This was especially true for the reserved disciples. If they wanted to become true disciples, the most direct way was to go to the Western Void to guard the borders of the other races, or go to the northern front lines to gain merit. As for elite disciples like Chernzong, they were required to reach the Lamita realm before they could go to the northern front lines to serve. Any elite disciple could definitely reach the Lamita realm. The only difference was their cultivation level. Once they reached the Lamita realm, they could leave the battlefield after 100 years of service or a certain amount of merit. Merit wasn't just a display of one's accomplishments. It could also be exchanged at the Eternal Battle Fort. The Eternal Battle Fort was a major sect in the star field, one of the strongest in the Void. Although they weren't as strong as Will Heavenly Palace in terms of combat power, they were superior in other aspects, especially when it came to treasures. Moreover, Chen Zong clearly remembered that he had a clone in the Eternal Battle Fort. It was a clone formed by the power of the world. Chen Zong felt that it might be useful to him, but it was very valuable in the Eternal Battle Fort. Even if he was an elite disciple of Will Heavenly Palace, he wouldn't be able to get it for free. Unless he was willing to give up his identity as a disciple of Will Heavenly Palace and become a disciple of the Eternal Battle Fort. However, that was impossible. But there was another way, and that was to exchange merit for it. Of course, it wasn't cheap. However, Chen Zong still planned to obtain more battle merits before exchanging them for his own avatar of the power of heaven and earth. 10,000 merit points. That was at least 10,000 merit points. As for the merit points, it was very simple. He had to kill barbarians. The first thing Chen Zong had to do when he came to serve at the northern front lines was to report to one of the battle zones. After his name and origin were recorded, he would receive a corresponding token. After killing a barbarian, the token would automatically accumulate merit points. It couldn't be faked. The escapee's speed kept increasing until it reached the limit of a high-grade void boat. Then, it activated void travel. In this way, it could greatly shorten the time to enter the Allo-Star Zone. After exiting the void travel, the void boat flew into the void belt between star zones. More than 10 days were mainly used to cross the void belt. While flying, Chen Zong cultivated. He also activated the escapee's protective shield to defend against external attacks at any time and protect himself. Just like that, 10 days passed peacefully. The escapee officially flew out of the void belt and entered the Allo-Star system. As soon as he entered the Allo-Star zone, Chen Zong smelled the strong smell of gunpowder. It was the smell of a battlefield. Desolate, cruel, cold. After entering, Chen Zong found that the void boat's speed had been significantly reduced. This was because there were traces of strange auras in the void boat that were affecting the core of the void boat. The control performance of the void boat began to decline. The deeper it went, the more serious the interference was. In addition, the void boat was full of stones. These were the fragments of stars. Before coming, Chen Zong had already done his research. In the Allo-Star Zone and the Qingtai Star Zone, the void boat's function would be greatly reduced. Void travel was almost completely abolished. As for the Tylo Star Zone, which was completely occupied by the barbarian tribe, the void boat could not be used at all. This was because the barbarian tribe had consciously developed a method to suppress and interfere with the void boat. As for the star fragments scattered everywhere, they were left behind after many battles. The stars were constantly damaged and eventually shattered. There were too many to clean up. As they went deeper, the escapee became more and more obstructed. Chen Zong had to get out of the escapee and put it away. He flew on his own towards the nearest light battle zone number 9, which was shown on the astrolabe. The deeper Chen Zong went, the more ruthless and desolate the auras he could feel. They were full of a sense of urgency. In an instant, Chen Zong was locked on by several auras. These auras were full of shocking killing intent. They were ruthless and cold to the extreme. It was as if they would immediately attack him if he made the slightest move. This aura was different from the auras of ordinary cultivators. It was an aura that would only appear if one stayed on the battlefield for a long time. "Who are you?" A cold voice sounded. "Show me your battle order." As soon as the voice sounded, 10 people appeared around Chen Zong. The 10 people surrounded him. No matter which direction he went, he would not be able to escape. Among these 10 people, the highest cultivation was at the 7th cycle of the Tao Manipulation Realm, and the lowest was at the 5th cycle of the Tao Manipulation Realm. As for their appearance, there were both men and women. Some looked older, but at the very least, they all looked middle-aged. "I am Chen Zong, the true disciple of the Will Heavenly Palace. I am here to serve," Chen Zong said neither slowly nor quickly. He was not afraid because of the auras locked on him. These people might not be weak, but if they really fought, they would definitely not be his mat. Hearing Chen Zong's words, the 10 people immediately retracted their auras and looked serious. Do you have a service guide? The 7th cycle of the Tao Manipulation Realm leader asked in a deep voice. The service guide was like a label. Holding the service guide of one's own faction was a form of identity verification. As for the wandering cultivators, they could also obtain the service guide through some method. Since Chen Zong was here to serve, Heart Intent Tao Lord would naturally prepare the service guide. After reading the service guide, the 10 people's expressions relaxed. Sorry, we are a patrol team. We search for the demon barbarian tribe and any abnormalities. The leader immediately explained with a much better attitude. You are going to the 9th small battle fort, right? Just keep flying forward. You will arrive after flying for about 100,000 light miles. The Will Heavenly Palace was a top faction. Its true disciples would all come here to serve. Their achievements were amazing, so they were very respected. Thank you. Chen Zong put away the service guide. The 10 people cupped their fists and left to continue their patrol. Chen Zong retracted his gaze and quickly flew forward. Each of the 3 major battle zones had a battle fort. That was the core of the battle zone. The battle fort in the minor battle zone was called a small battle fort. The battle fort in the medium battle zone was called a medium battle fort. And the battle fort in the major battle zone was called a large battle fort. These battle forts were built by the Eternal Battle Fort or by using the skills of the Eternal Battle Fort. To a certain extent, they imitated the Eternal Battle Fort. Light miles was the unit used to calculate distance in the void. If converted, 1 light mile was about 10 miles. 100,000 light miles was a distance of 1,000,000 miles. However, after cultivating to fly in the void and losing the pull of gravity, one would be several times faster than in the stars or world. With Chen Zong's speed, 100,000 light miles was not very far. Fly, fly, fly. Chen Zong continued to fly. During this time, he encountered another patrol team, who also showed him the military service guide. He was 40,000 light miles away from the 9th small battle fort. Chapter 2165. Ambush. The ambush was so sudden that Chen Zong did not even sense it until it was launched. It was worth noting that Chen Zong's perception was very sharp, far better than that of other path manipulation realm cultivators. Even so, he only sensed it at the beginning of the ambush. If it were other path manipulation realm cultivators, they would have sensed it even slower or even be killed. That cold and violent killing intent was very strong, very clear, and very shocking. It was as sudden as a bolt of lightning or a flame. Chen Zong felt that this aura was very familiar. It was the aura of the demon barbarians. If he was not mistaken, it was the demon barbarians who launched the ambush. There were demon barbarians here, 40,000 light miles away from the number 9 small fortress. It was incredible. In an instant, Chen Zong's thoughts flashed like lightning, and he quickly deduced. Either that, or there were traitors, commonly known as barbarian traitors, cultivators who had been secretly recruited by the barbarian tribe for some reason. They lurked among the humans, secretly providing information to the barbarian tribe and setting up traps for cultivators. Or the demon barbarians were very terrifying and had amazing infiltration ability, sneaking in here without anyone knowing and attacking the cultivators. No matter which it was, now was not the time to think about it. Moreover, he had just arrived. In an instant, 3 terrifying attacks came from 3 directions. One was extremely sharp, with sharp claws tearing through the air, as if tearing through everything. One was extremely violent, with great force, as if it could destroy everything. One was cold, strange, tricky, and frightening. The 3 attacks came from 3 different directions, and they were very well coordinated, directly blocking all of Chen Zong's escape route. It was like a well-planned ambush, but Chen Zong was more willing to believe that it was an accident. The attacks came in an instant, as fast as lightning. The battle prowess of the 3 barbarian demons had reached the 7-star level. 7-star was very strong, but it was nothing to Chunzong. Chunzong did not dodge. In an instant, he swung his sword. The sword flashed and returned to its scabbard in an instant. The 3 demon barbarians who attacked all stopped and died. Attacking him with such combat strength was simply courting death. Chunzong had killed 3 barbarian warriors with a single sword strike. Then, he collected the corpses of the 3 barbarian warriors, and prepared to take them to the number 9 small-sized fortress. There were still 40,000 light kilometers to go. Not long after, Chunzong finally arrived. Although it was said to be a small fortress, its scale was astonishing from its appearance. It was like a low-level star that was slowly rotating, and its surface was covered with all kinds of buildings. It was indeed the style of the eternal battle fort. It was like a battle fortress. Just by looking at its appearance, Chunzong felt a sense of horror, and his hair stood on end. He felt that if he approached it rashly and was identified as an enemy, he would suffer a devastating blow. The battle fortress was a camp for cultivators. At the same time, it was also a weapon of war, a gigantic weapon of war. The next step was to verify his identity. After that, someone led Chunzong into the battle fort to report everything. True disciple of the Will Heavenly Palace, Chunzong. Good, there is no problem with your identity. This is your battle order. At the reporting office of the battle fort, Chunzong received his battle order after passing the second round of verification. After refining it, the battle order turned into a brand that fell on the back of his hand according to Chunzong's will. After receiving the battle order, Chunzong was also assigned a room to rest in. Not long after, someone came to invite Chunzong, saying that one of the 10 great generals of the battle fort, Cold Wave General, wanted to see him. Chunzong's heart skipped a beat. It just so happened that he needed to find the upper echelons of the battle fort, so he followed. There were 10 great generals in the number 9 small-sized fortress, and all of them were Yuan underworld powerhouses. Although the main combat strength in the Light War Zone was the Dao Manipulation Realm, which corresponded to the Demon Barbarian race's warrior level, there would occasionally be Yuan underworld hero-level experts. Once they appeared, they would cause great casualties to the Dao Manipulation Realm expert. Therefore, it was very necessary to have Yuan underworld powerhouses. Cold Wave General was one of the 10 great generals of the number 9 small-sized fortress and was ranked second. When Chunzong saw Cold Wave General, he was a middle-aged man with a restrained aura. Even with his strong senses, Chunzong couldn't sense it. However, Chunzong sensed a familiar aura from Cold Wave General. The aura of the Will Heavenly Palace fluctuated. Chun Shidi, you are indeed extraordinary. Cold Wave General smiled. I am Li Hanqiao, a true disciple of the Heart Chun Palace of the Will Heavenly Palace. Greetings, senior brother. Chunzong saluted unhurriedly, although he was a little surprised. However, there was nothing strange about it. There were thousands of people in the Will Heavenly Palace, and the number of true disciples was the highest. There were thousands of them, and they covered the Dao Manipulation Realm and Yuan Underworld Realm. Of course, the number of true disciples in the Dao Manipulation Realm was the highest, and there were fewer Yuan Underworld Realm disciples. There were also a small number of Yuan Underworld Realm disciples who weren't true disciples but had a status higher than that. However, they weren't elders either, because only those in the Divine Ability Realm were qualified to become elders. However, Yuan Underworld Realm disciples who had another status weren't inferior to elders in the slightest. In fact, their status was even higher than many elders. No need to be so polite. Cold Wave General smiled and gestured for Chunzong to sit down. This is a war zone and we can be mobilized at any time. Therefore, I won't treat you to a drink. Although I'm in charge of the number 9 small-sized battle fort, I still receive news from the Heavenly Palace every once in a while. Therefore, although I've never seen you before, I still know your name. Li Hanqiao smiled again. Senior brother, you flatter me. I am just an insignificant member of the Sky Palace, Chen Zong said modestly. Li Hongqiao smiled faintly and didn't continue on this topic. Instead, he changed his expression and became serious. Junior brother, you are new here, while I have been overseeing this place for more than 100 years. Therefore, I know more about it. Chen Zong also stopped smiling and put on a solemn expression. He seemed to be listening attentively. The demonic barbarian race is very ferocious. Anyone who is careless in any battle may die. This kind of war isn't an ordinary battle of experience or a simple life and death battle. It is a war between races and a void battle. It is dozens of times crueler than you can imagine. Li Hongqiao's tone and expression were extremely solemn. Therefore, even if you are the fifth true disciple of the wholehearted palace and have outstanding talent and strength, you absolutely can't relax in this place. Li Hongqiao explained the situation here to Chen Zong using the identity of a senior who had many years of experience on the battlefield. He also told Chen Zong a lot of things that he should pay attention to. After all, Li Hongqiao was a true disciple of the Will Sky Palace, and the people of the Will Sky Palace had always been very united. Li Hongqiao told Chen Zong about all kinds of things, and Chen Zong took them all down. Chen Zong also knew how difficult it was to obtain battle merit. In simple words, the most direct way to obtain battle merits was to kill a demonic barbarian. Killing a 1-star demonic barbarian warrior would give you 1 battle merit, and so on. Killing a 2-star demonic barbarian warrior would give you 2 battle merit points. Killing a 9-star demonic barbarian warrior would give you 9 battle merit points. It was very difficult to obtain battle merit points. However, there would be no change after reaching the 10-star level. Killing a 10-star demonic barbarian warrior would give you 20 battle merit points. Killing an 11-star demonic barbarian warrior would give you 100 battle merit points, and killing a 12-star demonic barbarian warrior would give you 1,000 battle merit points. The increase was amazing. Of course, there were relatively few Supreme Realm demonic barbarian warriors, especially 12-star demonic barbarian warriors. Therefore, in terms of status, 12-star demonic barbarian warriors were better than most demonic barbarian warriors. Once a 12-star demonic barbarian warrior broke through to become a hero, his potential would be amazing. It was very likely that he would grow into a 12-star hero and be the best among his peers. It was the same for cultivators. After all, there were very few people who could break through the norm and reach the Lamita realm in terms of fighting prowess. Many Dao Manipulation Realm cultivators could only reach 9-star demonic barbarians when they reached the 9th transformation. They could not break through the norm and reach the Supreme Realm. It was like a natural chasm. Killing a 1-star Yuan Demon Warrior would only give you 100 battle merit points, which was equivalent to killing an 11-star Dao Manipulation Realm cultivator. Seeing Chen Zong's strange expression, Li Hongqiao seemed to have thought of something. Junior brother, how many battle merit points does Wholehearted Dao Master want before you can leave the battlefield? 100,000. This wasn't a secret, so Chen Zong naturally wouldn't hide it. 100,000. Li Hongqiao suddenly exclaimed, looking very surprised. This made Chen Zong's expression change. It was a little strange. 100,000 is quite a lot. Li Hongqiao sighed and looked at Chen Zong. Junior brother, do you know how many battle merit points an ordinary true disciple of the Heavenly Palace needs to serve? Chen Zong shook his head. He did not know about this. Was it not 100,000? 10,000? Li Hongqiao spat out 2 words which surprised Chen Zong. An ordinary true disciple of the Heavenly Palace required 10,000 battle merit points or 100 years of service. An elite true disciple of the Heavenly Palace required 50,000 battle merit points or 100 years of service. Chen Zong's requirement was 100,000 battle merit points or 100 years of service. Although I don't know why Wholehearted Dao Master wants this, there must be a reason. Junior brother, you should do your best, Li Hongqiao suggested, 100 years of service is the minimum requirement. There is no requirement for battle merit, but I still suggest that you try to get 100,000 battle merit points within 100 years of service. Only more, not less. Chen Zong nodded, thinking of why Wholehearted Tao Master wanted this title. True Disciple title. Unparalleled. It seemed to be a little extraordinary. That was why Wholehearted Tao Master wanted him to serve 100 years of service or 100,000 battle merit points. It was just that 100,000 battle merit points were not easy to get. He did not know how many demon barbarian warriors he had to kill. Thinking about it, Chen Zong felt that there was still a long way to go. 100,000 battle merit points, in exchange for 1-star combat strength, meant that he had to kill 100,000 demon barbarian warriors. Chapter 2166. There was actually more than one way to obtain battle merit. However, killing barbarians was the most direct way. The other way was to accept missions. There would be some missions listed in the battle fort, and completing them would give the corresponding battle merits as a reward. The minimum reward was 10 points, while the maximum reward was hundreds or even thousands of points. However, completing missions often required time and risk. However, if missions were combined with killing barbarians, the speed of obtaining battle merits would be greatly increased. Li Hanchao was a true disciple of the Heart Chun Palace of the Will Heavenly Palace. He was a fellow disciple of the same sect as Chen Zong. Although this was the first time they met, he was very responsible. Not only did he inform Chen Zong of various things to pay attention to, but he also gave Chen Zong many suggestions in the end. For example, it would be relatively safer to take on patrol missions first and use a few years to familiarize himself with the environment here. Chen Zong thought about it and rejected the suggestion. The battle merits of patrol missions were too little, and the duration was too long. A patrol mission would last at least 3 months, and he would only be rewarded with 10 battle merit. He wanted to obtain 100,000 battle merit. 10 battle merits were like a drop in the bucket. How many patrol missions would he have to carry out to obtain that amount? The cost was too shocking. For example, the 3 7-star barbarian warriors he had killed when he came here were worth 21 battle merits. Thinking of the 3 barbarian warriors who had attacked him but were killed by him, Chen Zong immediately took out their corpses. This is... Li Hanchao was slightly startled and focused his eyes. Senior brother, this is the barbarian warrior I killed when I was 40,000 light miles away from the battle fort, Chen Zong said unhurriedly. 40,000 light miles. Li Hanchao's tone suddenly became very serious. 40,000 light miles sounded very far, but it was actually not far at all. With the speed of a Yuan underworld expert, he could cross it very quickly. It was very shocking that there were barbarian warriors hiding 40,000 light miles away from the battle fort. One had to know that there were quite a few path manipulation realm cultivators who had taken on patrol missions. They usually moved in groups and patrolled everywhere, covering at least 100,000 light miles. Theoretically speaking, the demon barbarian warriors should not have been able to sneak in. Junior brother, are you sure? Li Hanchao's tone was very serious, and his expression was very serious. I'm sure. Chen Zong sounded very certain. This is no small matter. Junior brother, I will gather the other generals first. When the time comes, I will need you to explain everything in detail, Li Hanchao said in a serious tone. He was afraid that Chen Zong would resist, so he explained the seriousness of the matter. Hidden demon barbarian warriors had appeared 40,000 light miles away from the battle fort, which was very shocking. If they were not careful, there might be demon barbarian warriors hiding even closer, which would be a hidden danger. Therefore, it was necessary to gather the other great generals. After issuing the summons, Li Hanchao and Chen Zong quickly rushed to the conference hall. 5 of the 10 Yuan underworld generals left the fortress to fend off the barbarian braves as much as possible. Hanchao, What is the important matter you mentioned? As soon as Li Hanchao led Chen Zong into the great council hall, a loud voice rang out like a large bell. It was a black man with a very strong physique. He wore a short robe and looked tall and sturdy, as if he contained an extremely terrifying power. He was a Yuan underworld body refinement cultivator. The aura emitted by his tyrannical physique formed a shocking suppression on the surroundings. The other three great generals were also present. All of their auras were restrained, but there were still traces of them that permeated the surroundings, forming a suppression. Immediately after, numerous gazes landed on Chen Zong, immediately exerting an extremely strong pressure on him. However, Chen Zong's willpower was strong and far surpassed the Dao controlling realm. In fact, it was even comparable to the Yuanming realm. Therefore, his calm and unruffled expression made people secretly admire him. Li Hanchao, don't tell me the important matter you mentioned is to bring a Dao manipulation realm expert here? Suddenly, one of them smiled with a hint of sarcasm. Then, he suddenly looked enlightened. Don't tell me this person is from the Will Heavenly Palace. Haha, the Will Heavenly Palace is indeed amazing, but everyone is the same here. Li Hanchao, don't be too self-righteous. Chen Zong knew that this person didn't get along with Senior Brotherly. Even if there were external enemies, there were still many conflicts of interest within the human race. This wasn't surprising. There were always some people who liked to engage in internal strife, or were narrow-minded and jealous of others. General Yunxi, General Han Chao is not someone who doesn't know the severity of the situation. On the other side, an old man in a green robe smiled. His tone and expression were gentle, and his voice seemed to have the power to calm people's hearts. This old man seemed to have some prestige. General Yunxi snorted softly and didn't say anything else. General Han Chao waved his hand and the corpses of 3 barbarian warriors appeared in front of everyone. What are you doing? Showing off? General Yunxi spoke again, as if he would feel uncomfortable if he didn't mock General Han Chao. Even if you want to show off, you should show off the corpses of the barbarian warriors, not the barbarian warriors. Everyone, these 3 corpses of the barbarian warriors are the important matter I want to talk about. Li Hanchao ignored General Yunxi's sarcasm and glanced at them calmly. This is Chen Zong, the 5th true disciple of the Will Heavenly Palace's Will Heavenly Palace. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression turned solemn. Will Heavenly Palace. It was a palace established by Heavenly Lord Will Heavenly Palace. It was said that Heavenly Lord Will Heavenly Palace was very powerful, and his battle strength was monstrous. The 5th true disciple was definitely not ordinary. I, Chen Shidi of the Heavenly Palace, came to serve. I was attacked by these 3 barbarian warriors 40,000 light miles away from the fortress and killed them. General Han Chao said again. This simple sentence caused the expressions of the 4 great generals to change drastically, and they were all shocked. Are you sure? The green-robed elder looked solemn. At this time, it was Chen Zong's turn to speak. Chen Zong did not hide anything. He told them everything in detail, from the first patrol he encountered. He even told them the location of the attack. Everyone's expression became more and more solemn. Damn it, how did these barbarians sneak in? The tower-like body refining expert said angrily. This wasn't a small matter, it was a big matter because 3 barbarians had sneaked in, which meant that more barbarians would sneak in. If so many barbarian warriors and even barbarian warriors sneaked in, it would be a disaster for the fortress. Next, the 5 great generals naturally had a secret meeting. Chen Zong got up and left first. Returning to his residence, Chen Zong began to think about how to get more merit points. Chen Zong roughly knew his master's intention of asking him to serve for 100 years or to get 100,000 merit points. The key was to get 100,000 merit points. The conditions for serving for 100 years were the same. It was not difficult to get 100,000 merit points. He only needed to guard the fortress. However, that was the most inconspicuous way. Gaining merit points was a way to prove himself. 100,000 merit points was definitely not a small number. In fact, it was a lot. However, the title of Wushuang that his master gave him was indeed extraordinary. Perhaps if he really wanted to get this title, he would have to put in more effort to prove himself. Merit points. Killing barbarian warriors was a must. Chernzong also intended to do so. However, how could he get more merit points while killing barbarian warriors? That was missions. Patrol missions were not necessary. They were time-consuming and low reward, so they were ruled out. However, except for patrol missions, there were few other missions, and they would be taken as soon as they appeared. Therefore, they were quite rare. About an hour later, Li Hanchao came to see Chernzong in person. He looked serious and seemed to be unhappy. "Senior brother Li, what's wrong?" Chernzong knew something was wrong when he saw Li Hanchao's expression. "I'm sorry, junior brother." Li Hanchao sighed slightly and immediately apologized to Chernzong. "Senior brother, why do you say that?" Chernzong asked in reply. "Just now, the five of us had a discussion about the invasion of barbarian warriors. Finally, we made a decision to lure them out," Li Hanchao said seriously. "Senior brother, am I the bait?" Chernzong thought for a moment and immediately understood. Yes. Li Hanchao's heart was heavy. It was General Yunche's idea to let Chernzong be the bait, but it was supported by the other three generals. Li Hanchao's repeated objections were useless. This was the rule in the fortress. Once more generals agreed, it was basically settled. The minority followed the majority. "Junior brother, I'm sorry, Li Hanchao said again, full of regret. "Senior brother, you don't have to be like this," Chernzong smiled. "Since you want to lure them out, let me be the bait. It's a mission, right?" "It's a mission." Li Hanchao nodded. "Since it's a mission, how many merits will I get?" Chernzong asked again. 100. Li Hanchao was a little embarrassed to say it. However, the number of merits for a mission was decided by a vote after the generals discussed it together. 100 merits is too little. Chernzong said directly, "Senior brother, please make a request for me. 1,000 merits, and you can spread the news about my identity first. Then, I'll go out alone to attract the barbarian warriors. If there are more lurkers around, I believe they will take action." "No, junior brother, it's too risky." Li Hanchao immediately refused. This was the battlefield, not other places. Once he became the bait, the possibility of death was very high. Moreover, he had to spread the news about his identity first. A true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace. This alone was enough to make many barbarian warriors want to kill him. Every time a true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace came out, the barbarian race would suffer a lot of casualties. Of course, it was the same for true disciples of Will Heavenly Palace and Eternal Battle Fort. Basically, all true disciples from the major sects had the same treatment in the barbarian race. Moreover, Chernzong's identity was not an ordinary true disciple, but an elite one. "Senior brother, don't worry. Master has given me some life-saving means." Chernzong smiled, full of confidence. "Well, in that case, I won't persuade you." Li Hanchao nodded after thinking for a while. "Don't worry, I'll follow you secretly. If there's any danger, I'll act immediately." "If that's the case, I'll have to thank senior brother." Chernzong bowed. Chapter 2167. In the end, Chernzong's request was fulfilled under Li Hanchao's insistence. Spread the news that Chernzong was an elite disciple of the Heavenly Will Palace and used himself as bait to lure the snake out of its hole. The reward for this mission was 1,000 battle merit. One should know that the reward for a mission in a light war zone ranged from 10 to 1,000. 1,000 meant 1,000. If one wanted a higher reward, one could go to a medium war zone, where the upper limit was much higher. Of course, there had been some exceptions throughout history that exceeded the upper limit, but those were few and far between. Soon, Chernzong's identity was purposely spread. Almost all the cultivators in the fortress knew about it. What? Just a bait and he wants a reward of 1,000 battle merits? Is he crazy? For some reason, the content of the mission was leaked, which immediately caused many cultivators to discuss and be dissatisfied. Just being a bait to lure the snake out of its hole was worth 1,000 battle merit. I heard that Chen Zong asked for it himself, someone said. Because of this, it caused even more discussion. What was the point of asking for one's own mission? If one could ask for one's own battle merits, wouldn't it be possible to ask for a patrol mission to get 1,000 battle merits, which was 100 times better than the standard? Appeal. I don't agree. I don't agree either. Why? Go ahead, go ahead. Cloud Serpent, on the other hand, was laughing inwardly. This news was naturally leaked by him on purpose. So what if he was a true disciple of the Will Heavenly Palace? He was just a bait, and he wanted 1,000 battle points as a reward? If it weren't for Li Hanchao's strong argument, and the other 3 generals had to compromise, he wouldn't have agreed even if he was beaten to death. What's more, he's just a Dao manipulation realm cultivator. How dare he spread the news on purpose? Does he want to die faster? He's really overestimating himself. Ferment. After the news spread, it continued to ferment, causing the situation to become serious and out of control. Who leaked the news? In the meeting hall, the green-robed elder showed a rare hint of anger. Yunshi, you did it, didn't you? Li Hanchao's eyes shot out a cold light as he stared at General Yunshi, his voice cold. General Yunshi's heart trembled for no reason, and then he showed a hint of disdain. Humph, I'm not that bored. What should we do now? Another general asked. Even if they were great generals, they could not ignore the appeals of so many cultivators. I suggest that we reduce this mission's battle achievement to 100 points, General Yunshi immediately said. Impossible, the news of my junior brother's identity has already been spread. Li Hanchao immediately retorted. If his identity was exposed, he could indeed lower his ranking. At most, Chen Zong would not accept the mission. Li Hanchao, this isn't your heavenly palace of will, General Cloudsnake said angrily. You can't do whatever you want here. I'm just following the rules. Li Hanchao said indifferently, in that case, my junior brother and I won't stay in the number 9 theater of operations. After saying that, Li Hanchao turned around and was about to find Chen Zong. He wanted to discuss with Chen Zong about leaving the number 9 theater of operations and going to other theaters of operations. Wait a moment. The green-robed elder immediately stood up. General Coldwave, please be patient. If Li Hanchao really left the number 9 theater of operations and went to other theaters of operations, it would definitely be the loss of the number 9 theater of operations and the gain of the other theaters of operations. It should be known that in the number 9 theater of operations, General Coldwave's battle strength was ranked 2nd. He was very powerful. Even the strongest general did not have 100% confidence in defeating General Coldwave. He only had a slight advantage over him. In addition, if the elite true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace left, it would not be a good thing for the number 9 theater of operations. On the contrary, if other theaters of operations knew about it, it would only become a joke. Moreover, 4 generations, the elite true disciples of Will Heavenly Palace were not ordinary. No matter which theater of operations they went to, their final performance would be outstanding. This was a kind of promotion and attraction for the theater of operations. Discussion, quarrel, compromise in the end. It was a compromise between both sides. In other words, the content and rewards of this mission would not change, but if Chen Zong used himself as bait and failed to lure out more than 10 barbarian warriors, then the reward of this mission would be reduced by several levels, from 1,000 points to 100 points. Li Hanchao finally compromised. In this regard, Chen Zong agreed. This fermenting situation could be said to have been temporarily appeased. This was the 3rd day after the news spread. An elite true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace. A barbarian ape warrior's eyes flashed with incomparable coldness, his voice full of terrifying killing intent. Kill! A barbarian snake hissed on the side, chilling the hearts of those who heard it. Kill! The barbarian wolf warrior's face was also gloomy. Will Heavenly Palace? The true disciples of this human sect had indeed caused great harm to the barbarians. Although some of the true disciples of the Heavenly Will Palace had also been killed by the barbarians, the barbarian race had still managed to kill them. However, every true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace would kill a lot of barbarian warriors. This was especially true for the elite true disciples. They had great battle strength and astonishing potential. Of course, in addition to Will Heavenly Palace, the true disciples of other great sects were also the same. Every true disciple of a great human sect was a target of the barbarians, even if they had to pay a price. That might be a human scheme, the barbarian turtle warrior said. Among the barbarians were considered to be one of the more intelligent ones. So what if it's a scheme? I'll trade my life for the life of that true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace. The barbarian elephant warrior rumbled. Even if we have to pay with our lives, we must kill the true disciple of Will Heavenly Palace. Set everything up. This must be a scheme to lure us out. There's only one chance. Kill. Immediately, the barbarians lurking around the fort began to move. On the 5th day, Chernzong began to leave the fort. Li Hanchao concealed all of his aura and secretly followed him from a certain distance. The other human cultivators moved as well, forming a giant net. This time, they were going to catch all the barbarians lurking in the fort in one fell swoop. As for whether the bait could survive or not, that would depend on his own ability. Even if he didn't, he'd still make a contribution. After a few days of cultivation, Chernzong adjusted himself so that his essence, energy, and spirit were at their peak. This time, not only did he want to complete the mission of using himself as bait and get the reward of 1,000 battle credits, but he also wanted to kill as many barbarian demons as possible to get even more battle credit. As for the 3 7-star barbarians he'd killed before, he couldn't get the corresponding battle merits because he hadn't received a battle order yet. But it didn't matter. It was only 21 battle merits, which could be easily obtained. This time, he could definitely get more than 1,000 battle merit. Chernzong began to fly out of the fort at a certain speed. However, even after flying for several tens of thousands of light miles, nothing happened to him. Chernzong immediately changed his route and circled around the fort. After flying for several days, he still didn't encounter any attacks, nor did he feel any danger approaching. It made him wonder if there were no more barbarians lurking around. Or maybe the barbarians knew it was a scheme and didn't show up. Chernzong was very patient. He continued to wander around. If there were any barbarians lurking around, they would definitely know about him. They might even be secretly watching him. However, the barbarians were very good at hiding. Thinking about the previous attack, he didn't sense it until the moment it was launched. Maybe the barbarians had already set their eyes on him and were waiting for the best time to attack. Patience. This was a competition of patience. Day after day passed. Half a month went by in a flash, but there was no sign of the barbarian demons. Everything seemed like a groundless dream. Only Chernzong didn't give up. He kept flying around the fort. It felt like he wasn't afraid that the barbarians would know it was a scheme or a trap. Because according to the cultivator's contact with the barbarians should have taken action, even if they knew it was a scheme or a trap. But now, half a month had passed, and they still hadn't taken action. It was very likely that there were no more barbarians lurking around. Otherwise, they would have taken action long ago instead of waiting for so long. Unconsciously, the big net hiding in the dark loosened a little. At this moment, something unexpected happened. Chernzong, who was resting on a piece of rubble, suddenly exploded. Countless fragments with terrible power sputtered in all directions in an instant, as if they could pierce through everything. The power was extremely terrible and shocking. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, it was as if a fuse had been ignited. The other rocks beside it were also instantly shattered by the huge force. They exploded one after another and sputtered everywhere, covering everything in all directions. In the next breath, 9 figures of different sizes appeared. They exploded with an extremely terrifying aura that was violent and brutal. The barbarians have shown up. Sure enough, there are barbarian warriors lurking around. Those barbarians have really taken action. Chen Zong, who bore the brunt of the attack, felt it the most clearly and strongly. The 9 barbarian warriors all had the combat strength of 8 or 9 stars, and they all launched their strongest attacks in an instant. The power was extremely terrible. Faced with such an attack, any 9-star battle prowess would be dead for sure. But Chen Zong didn't. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he unsheathed his sword in an instant. These were all military exploits. Finally they appeared. It was worth it to waste half a month acting as bait to lure them. Chen Zong could feel that a wave of military exploits was approaching. The sword light flashed, and the sound of the sword was melodious. In an instant it was slashed. The speed of the sword was so fast that the 9 barbarian warriors who attacked him couldn't react in time. The sword light turned, and in an instant it disappeared in the debris and returned to the sheath. The 9 barbarian warriors who attacked Chen Zong were all stunned and couldn't move. Their eyes were wide open, and their faces were full of killing intent. They looked fierce and wanted to ignite their totems to launch a final attack, but they couldn't do it. The reason for that was because they had already been killed. 9 kills with 1 sword. Chapter 2168. It's done. So fast. The true disciple of the Will Heavenly Palace is amazing. Although Chen Zong deliberately spread his identity, he did not mention his combat strength. Everyone had a simple understanding of Chen Zong. Now that they saw Chen Zong kill 9 barbarian warriors with 1 strike, they were all surprised. His strength was really good. But was this the extent of the barbarians' attack? There were only 9 of them. If there were less than 10, Chen Zong would not be able to get 1,000 battle merits from this task. He would only get 100. The difference between 100 battle merits and 1,000 battle merits was huge. It was a difference of 10 times. Chen Zong hoped that more barbarian warriors would show up. As expected, there was an outbreak of fierce aura in an instant. More barbarian warriors attacked. There were 3 of them. These 3 demon barbarian warriors all had the combat strength of a 9-star warrior. They didn't hesitate to ignite their totem power and unleash a deadly blow. The death blow was their own death, but it was also the death of the enemy. The power of the blow was more than doubled. In just a moment, Chen Zong was in an extremely dangerous situation. 3 9-star barbarian warriors who burned their totems burst out with the death blow. Without the combat strength of the Supreme Realm, they could not resist at all. They would be killed in an instant. Chen Zong's expression did not change at all. In an instant, his sword was unsheathed again. Sword light flashed. He did not need to perform any sword technique. Under the cover of the sword principal field, all the movements of the 3 9-star barbarian warriors who burned their totems to burst out with the death blow were under Chen Zong's control. The death blow that they sacrificed their lives was extremely powerful and shocking, but it was useless because it could not hit Chen Zong at all. Instead, the sword light flashed and killed them directly. 3 kills in 1 strike. Chen Zong got another 27 battle merit. After the death of the 3 9-star barbarian warriors, 10 more figures suddenly appeared from the surrounding rubble. They seemed to have merged with the rubble. It was hard to notice them when they were not moving. There were 10 more barbarians, and they were all 8-star and 9-star barbarians. They hadn't attacked before, but had been waiting for this moment. They had even ignited their totem power to unleash a deadly attack. Suddenly, an 11th figure appeared. It seemed that he was using the 10 barbarian warriors as bait to attract Chen Zong's attention and distract Chen Zong's mind so that he could launch the final attack. Barbaric Flood Dragon Tribe. 10-star Barbaric Flood Dragon. That barbarian flood dragon actually unleashed a deadly strike. In an instant, the Yuan underworld cultivators in the distance turned pale with fright. Li Hanchao was also shocked. 10-star barbaric flood dragons that had ignited their totems to unleash a deadly strike were extremely powerful. Even a 10-star barbaric flood dragon would die if they were distracted. Because the barbarian flood dragon was an elite race, the amplification of their deadly strike was even more powerful and shocking. Everyone immediately understood. From the initial attack of 9 barbarian flood dragons, to 3 barbarian flood dragons, to 10 barbarian flood dragons, the 3 consecutive waves could only be considered a prelude. They were like bait to deceive Chen Zong so that the 10-star barbaric flood dragon could unleash a deadly strike. Of course, this was the most helpless method. If the first wave of 9 barbarian flood dragons could get rid of Chen Zong, then the other barbarian flood dragons would continue to lie in ambush. If the first wave did not work, then the second wave would come. If the second wave still did not work, then they would have to make a last stand. After all, a 10-star barbaric flood dragon was very valuable and could not be sacrificed. However, since they had already made their move, there was no reason to give up halfway. Otherwise, those warriors would have sacrificed themselves in vain. Therefore, they could only use their last resort. The 10-star barbaric flood dragon attacked directly and unleashed a deadly strike. One had to know that the barbarian flood dragons could only ignite their totems twice in their lives to unleash a deadly strike twice. In an instant, a terrifying feeling swept over Chen Zong as if it was going to drown him. This attack would threaten his life, but Chen Zong still looked indifferent. Sword light flashed, and in an instant, he attacked. The second style of the sect returning swords technique, picturesque mountains and rivers. As the sword fell, the sword chi condensed into a mountain and directly suppressed the barbarian flood dragons. The sword chi turned into a river that surrounded the area, covering a radius of 500 meters. It just happened to cover all the barbarian flood dragons. The 10 8-star and 9-star barbarian flood dragons could not withstand the picturesque mountains and rivers even if they ignited their totems to unleash a deadly strike. After all, Chen Zong's combat power was at the 10-star level. The power of the picturesque mountains and rivers that he unleashed was naturally even more shocking. Suppress. Kill in the suppression. The 10-star barbaric flood dragon unleashed its full power, and the picturesque mountains and rivers could not suppress it. Heart fire. Mind perception. Taichu sword origin power. The spirit ring that he had obtained from the White Jade City was activated, and his reaction speed was doubled. Chen Zong unleashed all his combat power. The second style, Forest of 1,000 Trees. In an instant, the sword chi turned into trees that were more than 10 meters tall and quickly fell from the sky like meteors. The third style, Heart Refinement, Sword 3. In an instant, the 500-meter sword Dao domain condensed and completely merged into the sword. Staring at the forest of 1,000 trees, the barbarian flood dragon that had ignited their totems closed in with all their might. That attack was extremely fierce, and they would not stop until they killed Chen Zong. Facing Chen Zong's heart refinement, they did not dodge at all. It was as if they were going to fight with their lives on the line. That was right. The barbarian flood dragon was going to do that. The moment he appeared, he knew that even if he killed the human prodigy, he would also die. This was because this was a trap. The human prodigy would definitely not let him leave. Since he was going to die anyway, he had to be more decisive and ruthless. He had to exchange his life for the human prodigy's. The sword instantly pierced through the barbarian flood dragon's body. It was as if the barbarian flood dragon had taken the initiative to attack. As the sword pierced through his body, the barbarian flood dragon tried his best to shrink his body and clamp down on the sword. Boom! An extremely fierce aura filled the air. "Junior brother, be careful." Li Hongqiao was shocked. The barbarian flood dragon was not only ruthless to his enemies, but also to himself, fighting with their lives on the line. If Chen Zong was hit by that punch, he would probably explode. This punch was extremely violent. The moment Chen Zong's sword was clamped down, he knew that something was wrong. Even though he reacted quickly, he was still a bit too slow. This was because the barbarian flood dragon had unleashed a second attack. The barbarian flood dragon was an elite barbarian tribe. They could burn their totemic power twice. This time, he burned his totemic power for the second time in exchange for a more powerful attack. It was a fatal attack. Chen Zong could not dodge and was hit directly. With a loud bang, a dull sound rang out. Chen Zong's body trembled as if he had been struck by lightning. He was pushed back in an instant. That attack seemed to have struck everyone's hearts, causing them to tremble. As Chen Zong was pushed back, he pulled out his extreme heart phaseless sword and sliced the barbarian flood dragon's body in half. Junior brother. Hongqiao was a bit slower. He quickly arrived. "I'm fine," Chen Zong said with a smile. The barbarian flood dragon's attack just now was indeed very powerful and shocking. However, Chen Zong had the Heart Seal treasure robe on him and absorbed 70% of the attack's power. Although the remaining 30% was very powerful, Chen Zong was still able to withstand it with his sixth transformation divine body. Therefore, that attack only shook Chen Zong's blood and qi, and he was only slightly injured. However, the injury was insignificant. Chen Zong's world divine body's self-healing ability allowed him to recover very quickly. With the appearance of Hongqiao, even if there were still some barbarian flood dragons hiding in the dark, they did not dare to make a move. This mission was over. From start to finish, Chen Zong had killed 23 barbarian flood dragons with at least 8-star combat power. There was even one 10-star barbarian flood dragon, which gave him more than 200 battle credits. Together with the 1,000 battle credits from the mission, he had more than 1,200 battle credit. Who knew how many people were envious, jealous, and hateful? However, the cultivators who were closing the net from the periphery and planning to catch all the barbarian flood dragons in one fell swoop were not completely without gains. They were rewarded with 10 battle credits each. In this way, getting 10 battle credits in half a month's time was undoubtedly much better than just patrolling. However, compared to Chen Zong's gains, there was still a big gap. No matter what, Chen Zong had used himself as bait and put himself in danger. He had almost been killed, so it was reasonable for him to get those battle credit. Even if some people were jealous and unwilling to accept it, they could not object to it. More than 1,200 battle merits. Chen Zong checked the battle order and knew how many battle credits he had. It's a pity that I need at least 10,000 battle credits to exchange for the Force of Heaven and Earth clone in the Eternal Battle Fort. 1,200 battle credits were not a small amount, but it was still a big gap compared to 10,000 battle credit. Although he had obtained more than 1,000 battle merits in such a short period of time, such an opportunity was rare. It wasn't something that could be obtained whenever he wanted to. More often than not, he would directly kill barbarian flood dragons to get battle credit. Chen Zong decided to take a short rest before leaving the battle fort and entering the war zone to hunt the barbarian flood dragons. Most of the time, there was no large-scale war between the human race and the barbarian flood dragons. They were all on the move and hunting each other. Under normal circumstances, both the human cultivators and the barbarian flood dragons would act in group. At least 2 or 3, and at most a dozen, they would take care of each other. However, there were also a few people who would choose to act alone. Acting alone meant more freedom, which meant that all the battle credits would belong to them. Of course, it also meant more danger. Chen Zong informed Li Hongqiao and planned to leave the battle fort. Chapter 2169. The so-called Extreme State Battle Team referred to a battle team that had extreme state fighting strength. Although it was rare to have extreme state fighting strength, it wasn't that rare. At least among the true disciples of the various great sects, there were quite a few who had extreme state fighting strength. Extreme state battle teams could be divided into two types. One was a battle team that had extreme state fighting strength, but not all of them were extreme state fighters. The other was a battle team that had extreme state fighting strength. The extreme state battle team that Li Hanqiao introduced to Chunzong was called the Big Dipper Battle Team. There were only 7 people in the team, and all of them had extreme state fighting strength. Among them, there were 4 low state fighting strength and 3 high state fighting strength. It was the number 1 battle team in Battle Zone number 9. Every member of the Big Dipper battle team had at least one spiritual artifact with them. Their fighting strength was considered outstanding among those of the same level. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to join the Big Dipper battle team. Many applications for 10-star fighting strength had failed. Compared to 10-star fighting strength, 11-star high-state fighting strength was even rarer. There might not even be one in 110-star fighting strength that had reached 11-star. Every increase in a Lemieter's combat power was a huge leap. As for 12-star super-state fighting strength, there wasn't any in Battle Zone number 9 at the moment. With such a powerful battle team, Chunzong was naturally interested. Li Hanqiao was one of the generals in the battle fort. His fighting strength was ranked 2nd. Of course, he was respected. "Hello, I'm Yao Feng from the Big Dipper battle team. I'll bring you to meet the captain." A young man with long hair that seemed to be emitting green light smiled at Chunzong. His smile was sincere. "I'm Chunzong. Thank you." Chunzong replied with a smile. Battle teams had their own stronghold in the battle fort. The stronger the battle team, the bigger and better their stronghold would be. This was preferential treatment. The stronghold of the Big Dipper battle team was the best among all the battle teams in the battle fort. The captain of the Big Dipper battle team was called Big Dipper. That might not be a name, but a code name like Yao Feng. Captain Heavenly Dipper had a tall and sturdy body. His fingers were thicker than an ordinary person's, and his knuckles were protruding. They seemed to contain extremely terrifying power that could destroy everything. His eyes seemed calm, but there was a majestic aura that was like a mountain. As he stared, it brought about an invisible pressure. "You're Chunzong, Big Dipper battle team." Heavenly Dipper stared at Chunzong as he spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. His tone was low and heavy, containing an indescribable pressure that felt like a formless mountain. "You are pretty smart, obtaining over 1,000 battle merits the moment you came." Chunzong's expression did not change, but he instinctively felt that something was wrong. This Heavenly Dipper's attitude towards him seemed to be somewhat different. "Every member of the Big Dipper battle team has real combat strength. We never play trick," Big Dipper added. Although he didn't mention names, anyone could tell that he was insinuating that Chunzong got the 1,000+ battle points because he played tricks. With just one sentence, he erased Chunzong's contribution of being the bait. Of course, he wasn't a general, nor was he in the upper echelons of the battlefront. He couldn't really deny Chunzong's contribution, but if such words were to spread, it would definitely have a negative impact on Chunzong, at least in terms of public opinion. After all, Big Dipper battle team's Big Dipper was recognized as the number 1 Dao controlling realm expert in Battle Zone number 9. The strong always had the most credibility. Their words and actions were easier to be recognized by others. "You're out of my league." Chunzong left with a sentence and turned to leave. From Big Dipper's words, Chunzong could completely conclude that he didn't want him to join the Big Dipper battle team. On the contrary, he wanted to humiliate him. Since that was the case, what was the point of staying here? "Stop." Big Dipper spoke again. An extremely terrifying aura, like that of an ancient mountain, rushed out and pressed down on Chen Zong, making Chen Zong feel even more pressured. Compared to when he faced the 10-star barbarian flood dragon in the Battle Star Tower, this aura seemed to be even stronger. My Big Dipper battle team isn't a place you can come and go as you please. What are you going to do? Chen Zong turned around as a cold light flashed in his eyes. The entire situation was out of his expectations. Yao Feng, who had brought him here, was standing at the side with a smile on his face. Before this, he seemed to be sincere, but now it was as if he was wearing a fake mask. Not all the members of the Big Dipper battle team were present, but there were still 2 or 3 people who looked like they were watching a show. Take my attack. Big Dipper smiled coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly grabbed out with his hand. In an instant, the 5 fingers with protruding joints carried an extremely terrifying power. It was as if they were tearing apart the void. They grabbed at Chen Zong fiercely and swiftly like lightning. Chen Zong only felt that he was enveloped by the 5 fingers. The 5 fingers were like a mountain pressing down on him. It was like a cage that directly suppressed the space around him. It was constantly pressing down on him, making it difficult for him to move at that moment. An 11-star battle strength was so powerful. Explode. 7-fold heart fire. Burn. As his cultivation base increased, and he continued to cultivate, Chen Zong had successfully completed the 7th Heart Palace. The Heart Fire superpower had also increased by another level. Primordial Sword Origin Power. Mind Perception. Spiritual Ring. In just an instant, Chen Zong activated all of them and displayed his strongest technique. The tyrannical pressure and restraint were resisted in an instant. The sword domain descended and suppressed. The second style of the sect returning swords technique, picturesque mountains and rivers. The offensive power of this style was not as good as the third style, forest of 1,000 trees. However, in terms of instantaneous suppression, it was better. The sword mountain condensed, and the river of sword qi surrounded it. It directly fell on Tiangang. Tiangong's body shook slightly. Immediately, an extremely terrifying aura burst out, directly blowing up picturesque mountains and rivers. The 5 fingers that grabbed at Chen Zong contracted and extended in an instant, turning into a palm. The palm print was powerful, as if it carried an extremely terrifying righteous force. It blasted out with an unstoppable force. All resistance was broken and destroyed by the terrifying righteous force of this palm. Even though Chen Zong had superb sword techniques, in the face of an absolute gap in battle strength, he was powerless. This was because his own battle strength was at the 10-star level. Battle strength was not just strength. It was a comprehensive nature. It was the combination of cultivation, martial arts, magic, and even secret technique. It included everything. Tiangong's cultivation base was at the peak of the 9th revolution of the path manipulation realm. Just in terms of cultivation alone, he was much stronger than Chen Zong. At the same time, his Dao power was also more powerful than Chen Zong's. The gap between the 10-star level and the 11-star level was extremely shocking. In the face of this attack, Chen Zong could only wave his sword to block it, gathering all his strength. However, it was defeated. The power of that attack was extremely terrifying. It destroyed everything in its path. There was a bang like the beating of a drum. Under the attack of Tiangong's palm, the extreme heart phaseless sword blasted towards Chen Zong's chest. The extremely terrifying power seemed to want to blow Chen Zong's body apart. It sent him flying backwards. However, after the power passed through the sword, it was weakened by 70% by the heart print treasure robe. The remaining 30% was also very terrifying. It rushed into the world god's body and caused a series of destruction. Chen Zong could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His body landed dozens of meters away. His face was pale, but his eyes flashed with a cold light as he stared at Tiangang. You can't even take a blow with 30% of my strength. What qualifications do you have to join my Tiangang battle team? Get lost. Tiangang did not attack again. Instead, he waved his hand and looked like he was driving Chen Zong away. Chen Zong sheathed his sword. He did not say anything because there was no need to say anything. It was never Chen Zong's style to speak harshly. It would seem weak and powerless. However, Chen Zong would not forget what happened today. There was still a long way to go. I say, Captain, is it good for you to do this? This will create an enemy with potential for us. An 11-star level person sitting at the side said. Although he said so, he had a casual expression on his face, as if he did not take this matter to heart. Enemy? Tiangang laughed in disdain. The Tiangang battle team had 3 11-star level combatants and 4 10-star level combatants. With such strength, even the other 11-star level combatants would not dare to go against them. So what if the other party had potential? Unless they had 12-star level combat strength of the Ultra Realm. However, 12-star level combat strength was very difficult to appear. Since ancient times, even in the major sects, it was difficult to have a few 12-star level combatants. It was no longer a matter of talent. As the light of the Heart-Een treasure robe flowed, Chen Zong's injuries healed quickly. Tiangong's blow was very powerful. Although it was weakened by 70%, the remaining 30% still caused quite a lot of damage to him. However, Tiangang did not dare to kill him. After all, they were in the fortress. If Tiangang killed him, he would die too. Tiangang. Chen Zong's eyes flashed with coldness. He would return those words and that blow in the future. After his injuries healed, Chen Zong did not stay. Instead, he left the fortress directly. Fight. Kill. Gain battle merits. Fight to fight. Improve himself. Chen Zong's heart was burning with a flame. As for telling Li Hanchao that he was humiliated and injured, Chen Zong had never thought of that. It was like a child who had lost a fight but had to tell his elders and ask them to come forward. One day they would get back at him personally, just like in the past. Tiangang thought that what he did humiliated him and hurt him. He probably did not think that it would have the opposite effect. Chen Zong did not know why a person he had never met would be so hostile to him. Tiangang did not hesitate to humiliate him and even hurt him, making an enemy for him. However, it did not matter what the reason was. In the number 9 small fortress, Chen Zong quickly flew out of the fortress and entered the war zone. He kept moving away from the fortress. He did not join any battle team but chose to travel alone. This was the most suitable habit for him. As for joining a battle team, Chen Zong was very curious at that time. What would a battle team with 3 11-star level combatants be like? If he could join, he would join. If he could not, he would not join. It did not matter much. Chapter 2170. There were many battle zones in the Aloe Star Zone, including dozens of minor ones. The number 9 battle zone was only one of them. Although it was only a minor battle zone, it covered an amazing area. It covered at least millions of light miles. In the number 9 battle zone, there was the number 9 battle fort of the human clan and a small tribe of the barbarian race. Both the human clan and the barbarian race wanted to destroy the other's battle fort or tribe. However, it was impossible because the battle fort itself had terrifying attack power, and the tribe also had its own methods. If they couldn't destroy the other's base, they could only hunt down the other's warriors. The number 9 battle zone could be divided into the north and the south. The south belonged to the human clan's battle fort, and the north belonged to the barbarian race's tribe. Human cultivators would sneak into the north to hunt down the barbarian race warriors, and the barbarian race warriors would sneak into the south to hunt down human cultivators. It was a mutual process. Both the south and the north could be divided into 3 rings, which were the outer ring, the middle ring, and the inner ring. The so-called inner ring was an area of 100,000 light-miles with the battle fort or tribe as the center. It was also the area where the patrols were the most intense. Once someone sneaked in, it would be a big deal. Just like the number 9 small-sized battle fortress. The middle ring was an area of 500,000 light-miles with the battle fort or tribe as the center. The outer ring was, of course, the whole of the south or north. Chen Zong burst forth with a burst of speed, flying out of the inner circle of the southern district like a bolt of lightning. The inner ring had the most intense patrols, and it was more difficult for the aliens to sneak in. After the previous operation, even if there were still barbarian race hiding in the inner ring, they would be very deep and hard to find. In that case, it was better to enter the middle ring, where the chances of encountering the barbarian race were higher. Chenzong even planned to leave the south and enter the north. That was the area of the barbarian race, and the chances of encountering the barbarian race were much higher. Before long, Chenzong flew out of the inner ring of the south and entered the middle ring. Chenzong naturally encountered some patrols along the way. The middle ring was vaster than the inner ring. Countless meteorite fragments were scattered all over the place, making it an easy place to hide. Therefore, Chenzong was attacked by the barbarian tribe again. There were relatively more barbarians who had sneaked into the middle ring of the southern area. When they saw Chenzong acting alone, they immediately seized the opportunity to attack. But in the end, it became Chenzong's military exploit. The military exploits in the battle order kept increasing. Chenzong did not stop. He did not deliberately look for the whereabouts of the barbarian warriors, because his goal was to rush out of the southern district and enter the northern district, which belonged to the barbarian tribe. When they rushed out of the middle ring of the southern district and entered the outer ring, Chenzong's battle order had more than 100 additional battle merits. The outer ring was even more vast. Similarly, there were more demon barbarian warriors in the outer ring. When Chenzong rushed out of the southern district and entered the meteorite belt that separated the northern and southern districts, the military exploits on the battle order had more than 200 additional battle merit. In this way, the total number of battle merits exceeded 1,500. The meteorite belt that separated the northern and southern districts was filled with moving meteorites of various sizes. The big ones were hundreds of meters long, and the small ones were only a few meters long. Some of the meteorites moved slowly, but some moved as fast as lightning. Think about it, meteorites that were at least a few meters long, or even dozens or hundreds of meters long moving at lightning speed, carried a shocking force. Once hit by a meteorite head-on, even a 9-star combat strength would not be able to withstand it and would be seriously injured. Even a 10-star combat strength would be injured. Moreover, the meteorites in the meteorite belt moved irregularly. They were sometimes fast and sometimes slow. It was difficult to grasp. Therefore, to cross the meteorite belt, one had to take some risk. However, despite the dangers, both the barbarian tribe and the human tribe had ways to deal with it and reduce the risk. Chenzong did not stop. He rushed directly into the meteorite belt and kept flying forward at a certain speed. Suddenly, a meteorite that was a few meters long came from the side at lightning speed, as if it was going to smash Chenzong. Chenzong did not turn his head. Instead, he moved his body and calmly dodged it. The meteorite belt was not very long. It was less than 100,000 kilometers long. Soon, Chenzong passed through the meteorite belt and entered the northern district. The aura of the northern district was different from the southern district. Perhaps it was because this place was occupied by the barbarian tribe, but the aura of the northern district was more barbaric and violent. It was a restless factor. Chenzong's eyes lit up and became brighter and brighter. Then, he chuckled and turned into a sword radiance and rushed out. Barbarian tribe, I'm coming! A team of 13 demon barbarian warriors was patrolling the northern district's outer ring. The barbarian tribe had their civilization and language, and so did the human tribe. However, after so many years of fighting, the human tribe and the barbarian tribe had deliberately learned each other's language. That way they could better understand each other's intentions. Learning a new language was not difficult for an imminent god realm practitioner. They could master it in a few days. Perhaps they were not proficient in it, but at least they were familiar with it and could communicate with it without any obstacles. When can we enter the southern district and kill some human weaklings? A barbarian bear warrior said in a gruff voice. The human tribe had always called the barbarian tribe barbarians, while the barbarian tribe had always called the human tribe weaklings. It did not mean that they were strong or weak, but that they were different races. After this patrol, we'll cross the meteorite belt and enter the southern district to kill those weaklings, the leader of the patrol team said with a grim smile. Suddenly, a sword radiance shot out from the drifting meteorite not far away and pierced through the sky. The sword radiance was extremely fast. As soon as it appeared, it turned into a mountain and fell from the sky. The sword chi condensed into a long river and surrounded the 13 demon barbarian warriors. The 13 demon barbarian warriors kept a certain distance from each other. It looked loose, but there was a mystery behind it. The distance was not far nor close. Once they were attacked, they would not be killed in one fell swoop. Moreover, they could reinforce each other or buy some time to escape. Sometimes, the difference between life and death was just a little bit of time and distance. However, under Chen Zong's sword Tao field domain, the 13 demon barbarian warriors could not escape and were all killed. Under the picturesque sword, all of them could not move. Their wish to cross the southern district to kill those weaklings would never be realized. The 13 demon barbarian warriors were all 7 or 8 stars, and their battle merits were close to 100. This was the third team of demon barbarian warriors that Chen Zong had killed after entering the northern district's outer ring. He had obtained close to 300 battle merit. Although it was still far from 100,000 battle merits, it was at least a good start. At least, he had accumulated more than 2,000 battle merits in his battle order. However, 2,000 battle merits were like a drop in the bucket compared to 100,000 battle merit. The speed of obtaining battle merits was still a little slow. In that case, he should continue to go deeper. Chen Zong's eyes flickered with a sharp light as he stared deeper into the northern district. Enter the middle ring. Compared to the outer ring, the middle ring was definitely more dangerous. However, the danger was still within his tolerance range. As for the inner ring, Chen Zong did not intend to enter, at least not now. The inner ring had the strongest patrols and was the easiest to be discovered. Moreover, it was also the easiest for brave warriors to arrive. Even if they were not brave warriors, there were still some 11-star demon barbarian warriors in the tribe. They were not people he could fight against now. As for the other dangers, it was nothing more than being discovered by the demon barbarian warriors. After all, there were also some demon barbarian warriors in the tribe. Their purpose was to guard against the 10 Yuanming generals in the human race's battle fortress. If he was really discovered, he could only blame it on his bad luck. However, if he was afraid of this, he might as well stay in the Intention Sky Palace obediently. Why bother coming here? Even if he was forced to serve here due to the rules, he could have stayed in the battle fortress with peace of mind and continued to take patrol missions in the southern district's inner ring until his 100 years of service ended and he left. That was the safest way, but also the way Chen Zong was least willing to do it. Obtaining 100,000 battle merits was Chen Zong's choice. It was not to live up to wholehearted Tao Master's expectations, but to live up to his own heart. Wherever the heart desired, the sword would go. Traveling alone was the freest and most flexible. There was no need to discuss anything with others. He could do whatever he wanted without caring about the overall situation. He could leave or stay if he wanted to. This was the northern district, so the degree of danger there was incomparable to the southern district. In the southern district, the demon barbarians had to sneak in and hide their movement. If they wanted to kill humans, they had to find the right opportunity to kill them and erase their traces before leaving quickly. This was the only way to ensure their own safety. However, the northern district was the territory of the demon barbarians. The demon barbarians could appear openly, but the human race had to hide. Even an 11-star martialist would have to act cautiously when entering this place, let alone a 10-star demon barbarian. Otherwise, if they were exposed, the demon barbarians' Lemeter would quickly chase after them. They might be able to kill 1 or 2 demon barbarians, but they would still be killed. The meteorites that were everywhere were the best concealment items. Chen Zong could conceal his aura almost perfectly. When Chen Zong deliberately concealed himself, ordinary Yuanming martialists would not be able to detect him. Kill. The 4th barbarian squad died under Chen Zong's sword, and their deaths became Chen Zong's battle credits, which continued to accumulate. The 5th wave, the 6th wave, the 7th wave. Chen Zong was like the incarnation of the Grim Reaper as he shuttled through the middle circle of the northern district. He used the meteorites as cover to continuously reap the lives of the demon barbarians. His battle merits had also exceeded 3,000 points. However, the continuous deaths of the demon barbarian teams also attracted the attention of the demon barbarian tribe. They paid close attention and sent out elite teams to search for them. In any case, the deaths of the demon barbarians definitely had something to do with the human race. However, it was difficult to find Chen Zong right away. After all, Chen Zong was a lone traveler who moved freely and was full of uncertainty. There was no clear path to follow. Furthermore, Chen Zong had always been more sensitive when it came to danger and could often avoid it ahead of time. This kind of awareness allowed Chen Zong to move around like a fish in water. Chapter 2171. There were many meteorites scattered in the war zone. Even if one wanted to clear them, it would not be an easy task. Moreover, after the meteorites were broken into pieces, they would slowly gather in other places and become new meteorite. In this way, there was no need to specifically clear the meteorites, which would be a waste of effort. A meteorite that was more than 10 meters in size floated slowly. It looked no different from other meteorites. No one knew that the interior of this meteorite had been hollowed out, and Chen Zong was sitting cross-legged in it. It was not difficult for Chen Zong to dig out the meteorite, hollow out the interior, and fill in the excavated area again. In fact, it was not difficult for most cultivators. It was a common method to hide oneself. Of course, although it was a common method, some people were not so secretive and would leave traces to be discovered. Some people would not. It was as if everything was natural. Chen Zong was the latter. Inside the meteorite, strands of blood-red qi circled around Chen Zong, continuously condensing and condensing. This was murderous qi. It was formed after Chen Zong continuously killed the demon barbarian warriors. It would be a waste if he did not make use of this murderous qi. However, most cultivators used the murderous qi by stimulating it and attacking the opponent to create a deterrent. This method was the most common, and the effect of the murderous qi was also the most obvious. Fortunately, Chen Zong had a trick up his sleeve. It was the theurgy of the Slaughter Dao Academy of the Eastern Court Sword Mountain. In the Slaughter Dao Academy, Chen Zong had cultivated the Great Massacre Bloody Hell and reached the 2nd level, which was at the level of Heaven Theurgy. Chen Zong had originally planned to use this murderous qi to cultivate this sword technique, to continuously improve it to a higher level and have greater power. But on second thought, Chen Zong realized that although the Bloody Massacre secret sword technique was good, he already had the sword technique of heart refinement and the sword technique of 10,000 sword. From now on, he would mainly fight with these two sword techniques. Moreover, even if he improved the Bloody Massacre secret sword technique, he would not be able to beat the two sword techniques he created himself. Other than the Great Massacre Blood Prison, there were other techniques that could be cultivated in the Massacre Dao College. Chen Zong chose one of them, Blood Fiend Explosion. The Blood Fiend Explosion was a consumable secret technique. It was equivalent to constantly condensing murderous aura into the original seed of the Blood Fiend Explosion. In theory, the Blood Fiend Explosion was a secret technique with no upper limit. If one had the ability, they could condense it to an astonishing level and instantly release a terrifying power. However, the amount of killing intent needed to condense the Blood Fiend Explosion was massive. The blood-red light continued to spread and finally condensed between Chen Zong's palms. It turned into an egg-sized sphere that kept spinning. It was blood-red in color and flashed with a red light of power. When all the blood-red light had condensed, the egg-sized sphere stopped spinning. A blood-red lightning arc appeared on its surface in an instant, emitting a shocking power. The level of this power fluctuation is roughly equivalent to the full force attack of a 9-star combat strength. Chen Zong thought to himself. However, it was still not enough. This kind of power had no effect on him at all. He still needed to condense more killing intent. Only then could he continue to increase his power and surpass the 9-star level and even reach the 10-star level or even higher. Chen Zong planned to make it his trump card, a trump card that belonged to him. It would be able to explode with power that was even stronger than his full force attack in an instant. After all, the killing intent accumulated from killing the demon barbarian warriors was still there. He could use it to increase his own strength. After condensing the original seed of the Blood Fiend Explosion, Chen Zong put it away. His divine thought quietly spread out and sensed all the movements around him. The meteorite kept moving forward at a uniform speed and kept going deeper into the northern district. On a meteorite that was dozens of meters in size, 4 figures were sitting cross-legged. They were taking pills to heal their injuries and adjust their breathing to recover their strength. Among the 4 people, there were 3 men and 1 woman. One was an old man, one was a middle-aged man, and one was a young man. As for the woman, she seemed to be in her 30s or 40s. These 4 people did not look well. Their faces were pale, their bodies were covered in blood, and their breathing was a little chaotic. Not long after, they finished refining the pills and adjusting their breathing. Their pale faces seemed to be a little rosy, but there was a touch of helplessness and bitterness on their faces. "I've used up all my pills," the young man said in a serious voice. "Me too," the woman said. The middle-aged man and the old man nodded, indicating that they were the same. Running out of pills meant that it would be difficult to recover their strength. Once they were injured, it would be difficult to heal in a short time. Moreover, in the current situation, they were being chased and intercepted by the barbarian warriors. They fled in all directions. If they wanted to leave this place, they might encounter the barbarian warriors at any time. The situation was critical and very dangerous. As such, the possibility of escaping was very low. "Let's fight to the death with these barbarians." The young man gritted his teeth, his face full of anger. "In this situation, we can only fight to the death." The old man sighed. "It's just a pity for you, Suemo. You have great potential. In the future, you'll be able to break the shackles of combat strength and step into the limitless state." Yes, if Suemo breaks the shackles of combat strength, then our Jiangchao battle team will have 3 limitless state combatants. The woman showed a yearning smile. The Jiangchao battle team was one of the limitless battle teams in the 9th district. They had 2 10-star combatants. It's useless to say more. We'll do our best. If we can escape, then we'll escape. If we can't escape, then we'll kill. The middle-aged man's voice was hoarse and obscure. His eyes shone with extremely cold, murderous intent. "Killing 1 is enough. Killing 2 is worth it." "Yes, then let's kill. I want to kill 10. The young man, Suemo, was also full of murderous intent. In all directions, the small team of barbarian warriors was rapidly approaching. From the looks of the situation, there was no way out. At the same time, a wave of meteorites kept drifting in from all directions. When a small team of barbarians passed by the meteorite where the 4 members of the Jiangchao battle team were, they immediately exploded with all their strength. The old man had the combat strength of a 10-star warrior, while the other 3 had the combat strength of a 9-star warrior. They instantly unleashed their full power and killed 4 of the barbarian warriors. Then, they charged towards the other barbarian warriors. Of course, they could choose to continue hiding, but the consequences would be that more barbarians would come. In the end, they would also be found. At that time, they might not be able to escape. As for now, they took the initiative to expose themselves and kill them. At least they had a chance to escape. Kill, kill, kill. Filled with murderous intent, the small team of barbarians was killed again. After all, they didn't have any limeters. "Let's go," the old man shouted, and the 4 immediately rushed towards the southern district at full speed. Suddenly, 2 figures flashed in front of them and blocked their way. 2 barbarians and 2 barbarian apes. The 2 barbarian apes' eyes were full of mockery. The aura emanating from their strong bodies was very shocking and tyrannical. 10-star combat strength. 2 barbarian apes with 10-star combat strength. "I'll hold them back. You 3 go." The captain of the Jiangchao battle team, the old man Wang Chaojiang, said in a low voice. Without hesitation, he directly rushed towards the barbarian ape. "I'm not going," Suemo shouted. He wanted to live and die together. "Let's go." The middle-aged man was very decisive and grabbed Suemo. He knew very well that staying would be of no use at all. Unless they had 10-star combat strength, they would be of no use. The 2 barbarian apes looked very amused, as if they were watching a show. Although the barbarians were called barbarians by the human race, their intelligence was actually not inferior to the human race. They just focused on different things. Compared to the human race, the barbarians worshipped strength and directly solved problems with strength. Even so, it didn't mean that the barbarians were brainless. Of the 2 10-star barbarian apes, only one made a move and blocked Wang Chaojiang. As for the other one, he did not move at all. Other barbarian apes appeared in the surroundings. There were as many as 10 of them, and each of them had 9-star battle prowess. "Don't kill them. Capture them alive and play with them," the barbarian ape that didn't make a move said. It wasn't the first time that the barbarians had captured humans alive. The captured humans would be taken back and played with until they died. Everyone had learned the language of the barbarians, and when they heard the barbarian apes' words, their expressions changed. If they were captured alive, their fate would be many times worse than death. Therefore, they would rather die on the spot. Suddenly, a meteorite that was more than 10 meters in size flew at an astonishing speed like a meteor. It was so shocking that it directly rushed toward a 9-star barbarian ape warrior. The barbarian ape warrior was furious and threw a punch. The terrifying power of the punch was so shocking that it seemed to be able to destroy everything. With a boom, the meteorite shattered, but the barbarian ape warrior was also directly hit. It was as if there was a terrifying force that pierced through the barbarian ape warrior and tore it apart. In the boom, gravel sputtered in all directions, covering thousands of meters in an instant. A sword light also flew out from the explosion. The sword light traversed the void as if it could pierce through everything. In just an instant, the remaining 9 9-star barbarian ape warriors were all swept by the sword light. They were all killed. The sudden change shocked the humans, and also made the 2 barbarian ape warriors slightly stunned. Immediately, the barbarian ape warrior that didn't make a move opened his mouth, revealing his sharp teeth. His eyes were glowing red, and his face was filled with killing intent. "Kill!" He threw a punch. That punch was like a meteor that traversed the vast sky. It was extremely fast and ferocious. Wherever it passed, all the gravel was crushed and completely turned into powder. The punch blasted toward the sword light like a hot knife through butter. Wisps of blood-red chi spread in the air and quickly rushed toward the sword light. They all went into the blood-red ball in the barbarian ape warrior's hand, making the blood-red ball grow little by little and become more condensed. The barbarian ape warrior's punch was full of anger and killing intent. Chapter 2172. 10,000 Swords. A sword pierced through the air. The domain of Sword Tao suppressed and transformed. It was as if a master of painting was drawing a brush. The brush spun lightly and drew a vivid picture of mountains and rivers. It was as if a mountain and a long river appeared abruptly but naturally in the void and fell from the sky. Suppress. The 10-star barbarian ape was suppressed in an instant. His body froze and he could not move. Life and death were only separated by a fine line in a battle between experts. That sliver of time could be one breath or less than one breath. It was a matter of life and death in an instant. Burn. The barbarian ape warrior's face was ferocious. Red light burst out from his eyes. The totem on his body seemed to have been ignited and burned violently. A tyrannical power burst out in an instant. That power seemed to be able to shatter the void. The picturesque mountain of swords was broken in an instant, and the river of swords was also shattered. The barbarian ape's punch was extremely ferocious. It was like a comet rampaging through the air, carrying a terrifying force that could shatter everything. This punch made people's expressions change drastically. Although the 3 9-star humans weren't directly targeted, they felt like they would be annihilated in an instant when they were affected by a trace of energy. Chen Zong's expression did not change at all. There was still a gap between that punch and the barbarian flood dragon's burning totem power when he was bait. The extreme heart phaseless sword was placed in front of him. His sword Tao domain shrank in an instant. 7-fold heart fire. Burn. Taichu sword origin power. Mind perception. In an instant, a sword pierced through the air. That sword was like a meteor chasing the moon. It was extremely fast and its power was condensed to the extreme. Sword technique, 3rd sword. 1 sword to break all techniques. The sword light was indomitable and extremely sharp. It carried Chen Zong's belief. That was the belief that 1 sword could break everything. It was the belief that nothing could stop it. The fist light was pierced through in an instant. It was like a hot knife through butter as it arrived. Starting from the fist, the barbarian ape warrior's arm was penetrated inch by inch, all the way to his shoulder. The terrifying sword chi entered his body through his shoulder and raged, turning into countless tiny swords that madly cut him. However, the barbarian ape warrior's body was strong and his vitality was extremely tenacious. He did not die immediately. Instead, he was extremely ferocious. When he burned his totem power, he had already decided that this was going to be a life-or-death attack. However, Chen Zong would not give him any chance. He did not know when the sword was drawn, but it swept across the air. Beheaded. The ferocious head flew high into the air, spinning in midair, as if it still had a trace of astonishment that it didn't have time to bloom. The barbarian ape warrior probably did not expect him to be killed so easily. So strong. Su Mo and the others were stunned. One beheaded him. How shocking. The barbarian ape warrior who was fighting with Wang Chaojiang was shocked. After knocking Wang Chaojiang back with a punch, he immediately retreated without hesitation. It was true that the barbarian ape warriors were fierce and good at fighting, and they were not afraid of death. However, not being afraid of death and not being afraid of death were 2 different concepts. His companion's combat strength was not inferior to his own. Not only was he unable to kill the opponent with a blow that burned his totem power, but he was also killed. If that was the case, why stay and die? It was better to escape quickly and bring the news back to the tribe, so that they could send more experts to kill this barbarian. Don't even think about leaving. Wang Chaojiang, who was knocked back by a punch, was experienced and immediately understood the opponent's intention. He forcibly mobilized his strength, ignoring his injuries, and immediately attacked. He opened his hands, and it seemed as if the waves of the river were reverberating. This move was not focused on attacking, but on intercepting. It only needed to stop the opponent. Wang Chaojiang succeeded. This move stopped the barbarian ape warrior for a breath, and that was enough. The third style of the 10,000 swords, Forest of 1,000 trees. Everyone only saw trees full of vitality and astonishing sharpness descend from the sky, bombarding around the barbarian ape warrior, suppressing and trapping him in the center. The picturesque mountains and rivers used the sword mountain to directly suppress, and the river of sword chi surrounded and cut. The forest of 1,000 trees was the sword chi tree falling and spreading all around, forming a cage-like existence, trapping the opponent inside. It was like a forest that could not be walked out of. Of course, at this moment, Chen Zong's sword was only a prototype. Even so, the power was amazing. Burn. Burst. The totem seemed to have turned into a raging flame. The barbarian ape warrior had to go all out, because at this moment, he had no choice but to go all out. When it was time to go all out, the barbarian ape warrior was very decisive and ruthless. Even if he knew that even if he went all out, he could not kill the opponent, but he still had to try. Unfortunately, that was just an extravagant hope. Under the sword art of heart refinement, the barbarian ape warrior was killed directly. A 10-star barbarian ape warrior was worth 20 battle merits, which was not a small amount. It added bricks and tiles to Chen Zong's battle merits. This time, 10 9-star barbarians were worth 90 battle merits, and 2 10-star barbarian ape warriors were worth 4 battle merits, which was a total of 130 battle merits. Seeing that all the barbarian ape warriors were dead, Wang Chaojiang and the other 3 were relieved and quickly expressed their gratitude to Chen Zong. Chen Zong took out some elixirs and gave them to the 4 to heal their wounds and restore their strength. I can't thank you enough. Under Chen Zong's protection, Wang Chaojiang and the other 3 refined the elixirs, healed their wounds, and restored their strength. They stood in a line in front of Chen Zong and bowed solemnly. If you have any orders in the future, we will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. As a human, this is what I should do. I hope you can leave safely. I won't see you off, Chen Zong said with a smile. It was a coincidence that he saved these people, and he gave them some elixirs because they were all humans. It was reasonable for him to help them resist the invasion of other races. As for the 4 leaving the northern district to return to the southern district, or even to the number 9 small-sized fortress, they had to rely on themselves. Chen Zong would not escort them all the way unless he happened to be going back and it was on the way. But now, Chen Zong planned to stay in the northern district and continue to hunt barbarian ape warriors to gain battle merits and improve himself. Soon, more barbarian ape warriors caught up with them. Kill! Chen Zong shouted and waved his sword. The sword light broke through the sky. A fierce battle was about to begin. There were more than 100 barbarian warriors that had rushed over. However, they didn't swarm over at once. Instead, they came in batches. Most of them were killed by Chen Zong. There were only 3 10-star level barbarian warriors left. 1 against 3, Chen Zong could not end the battle in a short time. However, Chen Zong was not weak. When he went all out, he blocked the siege of the 3 10-star barbarian ape warriors for a while. The fierce battle continued. If I continue to fight, I'm afraid more barbarian ape warriors will come. Chen Zong thought as he blocked the attacks of the barbarian ape warriors with his sword. If there were another 100 barbarian ape warriors below the 10-star level, Chen Zong would not be afraid. But if there were 10-star barbarians, the pressure would increase greatly. If there were 11-star barbarians, he would not be a match for them. So, he took the risk. Chen Zong did not dodge the attack this time. Instead, he took it head-on. With the heartprint robe on him, he blocked the extremely powerful attack. That attack did not burn the totem power. Therefore, the remaining 30% power after being weakened could not cause much damage to Chunzong at all. It only shook his qi and blood slightly. Such an attack did not affect him much. At the same time, Chunzong attacked with his sword. Sword technique of heart refinement. Sword 2. Sword technique of heart refinement was the path of breaking all techniques with one sword. However, it did not mean that Chunzong could only stab with his sword. That was just a way to use it. It could be used to stab, slash, and hack. Everything could be used at will. The barbarian ape warriors had a strong physique. Their vitality was amazing and tenacious. One sword could only kill them directly to prevent them from burning their totem power in desperation. Kill. There were 2 left. The 2 barbarian ape warriors were shocked and angry. The 3 of them joined forces, but one of them was killed. Die. With a roar, the enraged 10-star barbarian ape warrior immediately burned his totem power and attacked. The power of the attack was more than doubled. It was even more terrifying. He burned himself and died together with his opponent. One had to admit that the barbarian ape warrior's methods were really extreme and terrifying. That was why the barbarian ape warriors had only occupied 1-star zone and attacked 2-star zones. Their progress was slow. After all, they burned their totem power in exchange for a powerful attack to kill a strong enemy. However, they had to die in exchange for a life. In this way, even if they had many barbarian ape warriors, they would be constantly exhausted. On the other hand, if the barbarian ape warriors could recover after burning their totem power to kill the enemy, it would be a disaster for the human race. They would not only occupy 1-star zone, but more. Chunzong took the attack head-on. His vitality was shaken, and he was slightly injured. However, this injury gave him a chance to kill his opponent. There was only one left. The barbarian ape warrior turned around without hesitation and ran at full speed. Suppress. Chunzong attacked with his sword. The mountains and rivers were picturesque, and the sword mountain pressed down. Next, sword technique of heart refinement. Sword 3. Kill. 60 battle merit. After 3 kills in a row, Chunzong could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. First, he took the blow of the burning totem power and was slightly injured. Then, he quickly activated his explosive power and performed 2 moves in a row, causing his vitality to be shaken even more. However, the results were gratifying. Without hesitation, Chunzong took out a pill and consumed it. He quickly activated his technique to refine it. After this battle, Chunzong's strength was almost depleted. If another 10-star barbarian ape warrior came, Chunzong could survive, but it would be difficult to kill him. Another 3 10-star ape warriors died. There was a great uproar in the tribe of the 9th battle zone. It was rare to find a supreme realm warrior. They were the real elites. It was not a big deal to lose 1 or 2 of them. After all, it had been many years since the barbarian ape warriors invaded and fought with the human race. The number of supreme realm warriors who died could not be described by 100 or 1,000. Chapter 2173. Deep in the North District of Battle Zone No. 9, a huge semicircular bowl covered in spikes floated in the air like an upside-down bowl on the ground. There were other smaller upside-down bowls around it that were also covered in spikes. The tips of the spikes shone with a cold, scarlet light. It was a shocking sight. Many muscular figures were walking in and out of the place, coming and going in a hurry. All of them carried a shocking aura. The barbarian tribe. This was where the barbarian tribe was located. Several strong figures gathered in the largest camp of the tribe, exuding a shocking aura. They were the barbarian warriors. The warriors were equivalent to the origin underworld cultivators of the human race. They were powerful and had shocking combat strength. The barbarian tribe finished their discussion in the shortest time possible and immediately took action. Many 11-star barbarian warriors moved out, even the barbarian warriors. They wanted to find the human cultivator who had snuck into the North District and killed the barbarian warriors. They were certain that the human cultivator who had snuck into the North District was not at the origin underworld level, but at the Tao manipulation realm. However, the barbarian tribe did not care about rules. This was a war, not a competition. Since it was a war, they had to win by all means. It did not matter if it was fair or not. It would be good if they could win. Being able to kill so many barbarian warriors, some of them even at the 10-star level, meant that the human's combat strength was very strong. He was at least one of the best among the 10 stars or even 11 stars. It was more valuable to kill such a human. In fact, the human race was inferior to the barbarian tribe in terms of the number of powerhouses. The barbarian tribe had a higher chance of producing supreme-class warriors than the human race. Therefore, the human race would lose more supreme-class warriors than the barbarian tribe. Of course, this did not mean that the barbarian tribe could lose supreme-class warriors so easily. Chernzong let out a long breath after finishing the cultivation method. His qi refinement had improved to the middle 6th transformation of the Tao manipulation realm. His body refinement had also reached the middle 6th transformation of the divine body realm. His combat strength had improved as well, but it was not obvious. It was very difficult to improve one's combat strength. But no matter what, he had improved a lot. He unsheathed his sword. Light flowed on the blade like flowing autumn water. Traces of indescribable sharpness penetrated his heart and soul. Extreme heart phaseless sword. Chernzong could feel that as he continued to fight and kill, the potential of the extreme heart phaseless sword seemed to be constantly stimulated. This was his life divine weapon. Back then, when it was being nurtured, it had absorbed a bit of the sword Tao origin. Although it was not even 1,000th of the sword Tao origin, it still greatly reduced the nurturing time. Not only that, but the sword principle origin also greatly increased the potential of the life weapon. It was as if an ordinary genius had become a top genius. The advantage of the life divine weapon was that it would become stronger as the cultivator improved. However, life weapons with different potentials would be strengthened at different speed. The extreme heart phaseless sword, which had fused with a trace of the sword Tao origin, was definitely at the peak level. From the very beginning, it had reached the peak of heavenly divine artifact. Then, it became a pseudo-spiritual divine artifact. Now, Chernzong felt that the extremity phaseless sword was on the verge of a breakthrough. Once it broke through, it would surpass the heavenly divine artifact level and become a spiritual divine artifact. A spiritual divine artifact was not something that a heavenly divine artifact could compare to. For example, when the Heart Seal treasured garment was at the heavenly divine artifact level, it could weaken the attack by 70%. However, after it became a spiritual divine artifact, the weakening became devouring and absorbing, accumulating energy and transforming it into a kind of energy that could heal injuries. At the same time, it could also defend and protect itself. If the extreme heart phaseless sword could break through to the spiritual divine artifact level, it would become even more powerful. Regarding this, Chernzong was very much looking forward to it. Then, he would help the extreme heart phaseless sword break through to the next level. In an instant, Chernzong mobilized all the energy in his body and continuously poured it into the extreme heart phaseless sword, providing it for absorption. The extreme heart phaseless sword shook slightly and let out a soft sword hum, as if it was filled with joy. Chernzong's energy was one of the best nutrients for the extreme heart phaseless sword. Of course, if he could find some kind of source, especially a sword principle source, it would also be an excellent nutrient for the extreme heart phaseless sword, allowing it to improve even more. Wave after wave of energy poured in as if it was endless. The extreme heart phaseless sword was like a dried-up sponge, continuously absorbing Chen Zong's energy and breaking through that shackle, that natural moat. Breaking through was a little easier than Chen Zong had imagined. It was just a continuous supply of energy. In an instant, an extremely strong wave of sword qi exploded from the extreme heart phaseless sword and soared into the sky. Its sharpness seemed to be boundless. It directly pierced through the meteorite that Chen Zong was hiding in and traversed dozens of miles. It was extremely shocking. Chen Zong's expression changed greatly. This was an unforeseen event. With the fastest reaction, he hurriedly suppressed the wave of the extreme heart phaseless sword and quickly withdrew it. If it was somewhere else, Chen Zong would not have done so. But here, they were in the tribal area of the demonic barbarian tribe. The sudden explosion of such an astonishing wave of sword qi that traversed dozens of miles was simply like the sun in the dark night, attracting everyone's attention. I was too careless. Chen Zong secretly reflected on himself. Because the extreme heart phaseless sword was on the verge of breaking through and could not be suppressed, it was only a matter of time. Since that was the case, of course he had to lend a hand. But he did not expect that the moment of breaking through would cause such a huge commotion. This was not in the memory of Sword Master Dong Ting, because he did not have a life weapon. A life weapon was not a standard. Many experts did not have one. Of course, having a life weapon did not mean that one was the strongest, and not having one did not mean that one was not strong. A true expert was never determined by just one aspect. Having no time to check what kind of power the extreme heart phaseless sword had after breaking through, Chen Zong immediately took out a medicinal pellet and stuffed it into his mouth. He quickly swallowed it and activated his cultivation method to grind and digest the pellet to recover his consumed strength. At the same time, he rushed out of the meteorite and rushed toward the southern district. Why did he do that? Because at that moment, when the extreme heart phaseless sword broke through, the sword qi traversed dozens of miles. Even if he reacted in an instant and suppressed it, it still spread out. And this was the tribal area of the demonic barbarian tribe. Many demonic barbarian warriors must have sensed it. The demonic barbarian tribe did not have such sword qi. Only the human clan sword practitioners had it. The human clan sword practitioner who killed hundreds of our warriors has appeared. Go after him. Catch him alive and kill him. Feeling the sudden burst of sword qi, the demonic barbarian warriors all rushed toward the place where the sword qi broke out. This human clan sword practitioner is really arrogant. How dare he provoke us like this? An 11-star demonic barbarian warrior narrowed his eyes, emitting an extremely cold light. He was extremely terrifying and ferocious. In their view, Chen Zong's behavior was a blatant provocation. In the tribal area of the demonic barbarian tribe, he did not hide himself carefully. Instead, he burst out with such strong sword qi, as if he was afraid that others would not know that he was here. Wasn't this an arrogant provocation? Since he dared to provoke the demonic barbarian tribe like this, he could only die. Action, action, action. The demonic barbarian warriors all took action. They swarmed from all directions at the fastest speed and rushed to the place where the sword qi broke out. The sword qi that traversed dozens of miles had an astonishing fluctuation in an instant. It was enough to spread to hundreds of miles, and even thousands of miles away could feel a trace of it. It was equivalent to hundreds of miles of light. In addition, the demonic barbarian warriors detonated signals among themselves, which attracted more demonic barbarian warriors. A strong sense of crisis kept coming, which made Chen Zong know that he seemed to be in danger. Where would the danger come from in such a place? It was very simple. It came from the demonic barbarian tribe. However, Chen Zong did not panic. He looked calm and his eyes were deep. He kept flying and refining elixirs to restore his strength. No matter when he encountered danger, the most important thing was to restore his strength. In this way, he could face the coming danger more calmly. On the other hand, Chunzong could also communicate with the Supreme Heart Phaseless Sword. In terms of level, the Supreme Heart Phaseless Sword, which had reached the level of spiritual weapon, was more spiritual than before. When communicating with it, Chunzong felt that it was easier and smoother. In this way, he had 3 spiritual weapons and 1 secret treasure at the level of spiritual weapon. That secret treasure was the reward he got when he passed the 100th level of the Infinite Challenge in White Jade City. That secret treasure was a one-time use item. Chunzong had kept it until now, because he had not met an opponent who needed to use it. He also hoped that he would not need to use it this time. After communicating with it, Chunzong knew that the Supreme Heart Phaseless Sword was even more amazing after its upgrade. Its power had been increased. Of course, the increase in power was secondary. No matter how much it increased, Chunzong's battle strength could not break through the 10-star level and reach the 11-star level. The increase in power was just a side effect of the Supreme Heart Phaseless Sword's upgrade. There were more other abilities which happened to be closely related to Chunzong. With the upgrade of the sword, although his battle strength was still at the level of the 10-star level, there was an obvious increase. Moreover, it was more advantageous for him in battle. If it were the same as before, he wouldn't need to endure the attacks of the 3 10-star barbarian warriors, and he would be able to kill them all. How to describe it? If the battle star was a vertical line that kept extending, the battle strength would be higher. That was the height of the battle strength. Now, Chunzong had increased the width of his battle strength. There was no change in his battle strength, but he was better at fighting. Chunzong even had the idea of stopping and waiting for the demonic barbarian warriors to surround him so that he could have a good fight. However, as soon as this idea appeared, Chunzong immediately dismissed it. It was a very irrational idea. Unless there were no 11-star demonic barbarian warriors or brave barbarians. Chapter 2174. Human Sword Cultivator, it's time for you to die. Kill him. Dozens of demon barbarian warriors appeared in front of him. They happened to be a few small teams. They were lucky enough to encounter Chunzong, who was about to leave the northern district. Needless to say, the battle immediately broke out in an instant. Chunzong attacked with his sword without mercy. The Extreme Heart Phaseless Sword pierced through the air. In an instant the sword flashed. The Extreme Heart Phaseless Sword seemed to disintegrate in an instant, turning into dozens of sword flashes that shot out in the air. However, Chunzong still held a long sword in his hand. The dozens of sword flashes that shot out were not sword chi, but solid sword blades. The Extreme Heart Phaseless Sword could originally turn into 10,000 sword flashes. Now that this ability was enhanced, the sword flashes condensed into a solid form, and the lethality also increased greatly. The dozens of demon barbarian warriors were not at the 10-star level. They could not block Chunzong's sword at all. Their attacks were broken, and they were killed directly. This killing speed shocked Chunzong himself. Under normal circumstances, a 10-star combat power would not dare to take the combined attack of dozens of 8-star and 9-star combat power. After all, the combined power was still very strong, and they would be injured. In addition, a 10-star combat power could indeed crush a 9-star combat power, but it was impossible to kill dozens of 8-star and 9-star scattered 8-star and 9-star combat power in one hit. Chunzong's sword seemed to have turned into dozens of people attacking each demon barbarian warrior at the same time. The bloody aura spread and merged into the original seed of bloody explosion, making the power of bloody explosion more condensed and more powerful. As Chunzong kept killing the demon barbarian warriors, the original seed of bloody explosion became more condensed. In an instant, Chunzong felt the aura of the original seed of bloody explosion become much stronger. Its power directly reached the 10-star combat power level. In other words, when it exploded, Its power was enough to injure a 10-star combat power, but it was not certain if it could kill. With a flash, Chen Zong flew away from the dozens of demon barbarian warrior corpses floating in the air. His speed was shocking. Not long after, the other demon barbarian warriors flew over. When they saw the dozens of corpses floating in the air, they were furious and murderous. Sword Chi. These corpses had sword Chi waves left on their wounds. Obviously, they had been killed by human sword cultivators. Moreover, the sword Chi waves were very familiar. It was the same as the aura left on the wounds of the warriors who had been killed before. It was left behind by the human sword cultivator they were pursuing. This damned human sword cultivator, not only did he unleash his sword Chi to provoke them, he even killed dozens of warriors. This was simply unforgivable. Chase. Speed of life and death. Chen Zong's speed was very fast, but it was not so easy to leave the northern district, because the patrolling demon barbarian warriors were rushing over. This was very rare. Most of the demon barbarian warriors moved together just to pursue one person. It was undeniable that Chen Zong had such an honor. It's over. A team of the human race that was hiding inside the meteorite sensed the formidable aura of the barbarian warriors outside. Their complexions changed dramatically. They thought that they had been discovered and were doomed. Let's go all out and kill as many as we can. However, they soon realized that these demon barbarian warriors were just passing by and had not discovered them. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, they were very curious about why the demon barbarian warriors were so aggressive in such a large scale. Not only them, but also some other hidden teams of the human race. They originally thought that they had been discovered, but it turned out that they were not. Chen Zong was once again trapped in an encirclement. This time, it was not dozens of demon barbarian warriors, but hundreds of them. In the distance, a large meteorite floated by, and some cultivators of the human race were hiding in it. Who is he? I don't know, but he can't be an ordinary person since he can cause so many demon barbarian warriors to chase and surround him. He should be a talent of the human race. Should we help him? Let's wait and see. With our strength, even if we take action, I'm afraid it won't be of much help. On the contrary, we will be trapped and killed by the barbarians. This sentence was indeed reasonable. After all, looking at the hundreds of demon barbarian warriors, there were more than 10 10-star demon barbarian warriors, and the rest were at least 8-star demon barbarian warriors. This was undoubtedly a very terrifying force. Their team had less than 10 people, and only one of them had a 10-star demon barbarian warrior. If they appeared with such strength, they would immediately be surrounded by the demon barbarian warriors and die an unnatural death. It would be like throwing a bone to a vicious dog. Therefore, they could only wait and see. Unless 10 Supreme Class teams took action, there was no hope of resisting these demon barbarian warriors. Moreover, they did not know Chen Zong at all. They would not sacrifice their lives for Chen Zong. This was a common point. Chen Zong, who was surrounded by hundreds of demon barbarian warriors, was not nervous or flustered at all. There was only a sense of excitement that came from the depths of his heart. This feeling was very strange. It made his blood flow accelerate, and his blood felt like it was boiling and burning. Fight! 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 There seemed to be constant beating of war drums in his ears. Kill! 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 In his heart, there seemed to be someone shouting to kill and to charge forward unscathed. Human swordsmen, surrender! A 10-star barbarian flood dragon roared. They had invaded the human territory for many years, so they understood the human language and so on. They had more or less learned some human habits and language from the demon barbarian warriors. After all, compared to the human language, the demon barbarian warriors' language was more lacking. It was more direct. The response was a sword light that shot through the air, but the sword light was shattered in an instant. Kill! Another 10-star barbarian flood dragon roared. In an instant, a shocking aura burst out. His battle strength was monstrous, surging like a volcano erupting. He punched through the air. This attack was so powerful that it seemed like it was going to crush Chen Zong. As soon as he attacked, the other demon barbarians also attacked. This human swordsman was too abominable. He was so strong and looked so young. This meant that his talent and potential were amazing. If he continued to grow, he might bring more casualties to the demon barbarian warriors. Take this opportunity to kill him. Kill 10 10-star barbarians and hundreds of 8-star and 9-star barbarians attacked. The scene was extremely terrifying. The attacks that came from all directions seemed to have turned into a long river of power, surging and surging endlessly. It was extremely terrifying. In an instant, Chen Zong was drowned. It's over. He's dead. In the distance, several human teams that were hiding did not dare to show up. With their strength, even if they showed up, it would not make any difference. On the contrary, they would only add to the casualties. No, they would not be injured. All of them would die. Even if they did not die, they would be captured alive by the demon barbarians. The outcome would be more than 10 times worse than death. Facing the attacks of so many 10-star barbarians and hundreds of 8-star and 9-star barbarians, even an 11-star barbarian warrior could not guarantee his safety. It would be good if he could survive. In an instant, the sound of swords rang out. Sword light bloomed among the countless attacks. It was like a dazzling light hanging in the air. It was extremely dazzling. The hundreds of torrent-like attacks were immediately blocked. The sword light surrounded Chen Zong within a 10-meter radius, firmly wrapping around him. This move did not belong to the sword technique of heart refinement or the all swords technique. It was an effect of the extreme heart phaseless sword after it broke through to the spiritual artifact level. It was an ability that was stimulated by Chen Zong. It was a sword technique that was based on the sword principle domain. To put it simply, it could be regarded as a sword technique that came with the extreme heart phaseless sword. Well, Chen Zong had not given it a name yet. Now that it was displayed, 100 solid sword lights combined with the sword principle domain covered a 10-meter radius around Chen Zong. It resisted all the attacks. Its defensive power was extremely amazing. Such a sword technique made up for the shortcomings of Chen Zong's sword technique. It was an attack, a suppression, and a defense. Several human teams in the distance widened their eyes in shock. The hundreds of barbarian demons were the same. What kind of sword technique was this? It could actually block their attacks. Not only did it block the attacks of hundreds of 8-star and 9-star barbarian warriors, it even blocked the attacks of 10 10-star barbarian warriors. Clearly, this human sword cultivator's aura had not reached the 11-star level yet. Kill! A 10-star barbarian elephant warrior swung his nose and threw out a punch. It seemed as if a giant elephant was trampling on the ground. It instantly erupted with a terrifying power. It seemed as if the space around it had been smashed apart. However, this attack was still blocked by the sword light that was constantly sweeping around. It was instantly weakened and disintegrated. Human, what kind of sword technique is that? The barbarian flood dragon asked. You don't understand. Chen Zong's voice sounded as the sword light shot out in an instant. 100 sword lights was the upper limit that Chen Zong could control at the moment. Each sword light had a terrifying power. As they shot out, they covered the sky and covered the earth as they attacked the hundreds of barbarian demons. Even the 10 10-star barbarian demons were attacked at the same time. As the sword light covered the sky and the earth, it surged like a raging wave. When the sword light gathered, the human teams were extremely shocked. Dead. Except for the 10 10-star barbarian warriors, all the other 8-star and 9-star barbarian warriors were dead and turned into corpses floating in the void. It was just one attack. It was just a flash of sword light. How could it be so terrifying? The 10 10-star barbarian warriors could not believe it. How could this be? How could this be? How could this be? Even an 11-star barbarian warrior could not kill hundreds of barbarian warriors in such a short time. Next, it's your turn. Chen Zong's eyes flashed with killing intent. He pointed his sword finger in the air. In an instant, 100 sword lights pierced through the air and attacked the 10-star barbarian warriors in an extremely fierce manner. Chapter 2175. Hundreds of 8-star and 9-star barbarian warriors were all killed by Chen Zong's sword light within one breath, which was really shocking. But now, Chen Zong was fighting against 10-star barbarian warriors all by himself, which also shocked the other human troops who were hiding in the dark. It was obvious that Chen Zong's combat strength had not reached the level of an 11-star. He was only at the 10-star level. Although there was a difference in strength between the 10-star level, it was still very shocking to fight 1 against 10. The 10 barbarians were naturally shocked and angry. 100 sword lights surged like a torrent, constantly attacking, sweeping, flying, and attacking. For a time, the 10 barbarian demons could only defend. Chen Zong was fully focused. His eyes shone brightly, reflecting the 1,000 sword lights. They were as light and agile as a school of fish swimming in the water, and as fierce as a goshawk soaring through the sky. After the breakthrough, the extreme heart phaseless sword had reached the level of a spiritual artifact. It had more spirituality. Its ability was like a sword art. However, only Chen Zong could use it because it was very compatible with Chen Zong. Monster Trainer. Battle. A flash of light appeared. Chen Zong's progress in the cultivation of the One Heart Sutra wasn't fast, but with continuous hard work, he continued to improve from the One Heart Sutra to the Two Heart Sutras, then to the Three Heart Sutras. Then, he entered the White World to train. In Bai Jie's 10 years of experience, he had constantly fought, constantly cultivated, constantly sharpened himself, and his One Heart Sutra had also constantly improved. 1 mind and 4 thoughts. 1 mind 5 wills. 6 wills of 1 mind. Until the level of 1 mind and 8 intent. After coming to this battlefield and fighting, he had tempered himself again, reaching the level of 1 heart and 9 minds. Now, with the advancement of the extreme heart phaseless sword and his control over it, Chen Zong felt that he was about to grasp an opportunity for a breakthrough. Breaking through was a natural process, as if success was achieved when the conditions were right. The 10 wills of 1 heart. Chen Zong felt as if he had turned into 10 people in an instant. He didn't have the body of 10 people, but he had the consciousness of 10 people. This feeling was very strange, and it was something he had never felt before. The difference between the 9 intents of 1 heart and the 10 intents of 1 heart was only 1 intent, but it was a qualitative change. This was because the Heart Sutra was divided into 4 levels. Heart and Soul was the first level, Heart and Soul was the second level. Since there were different levels, there was a difference in realms. Once one broke through the realms, it would be a whole new world. Although the 9 wills of 1 heart exceeded the single heart and mind realm, it did not exceed the single heart and mind realm. But now, the Heart Sutra had broken through to the second level of the Heart Sutra. Chen Zong immediately felt a strange change. It was as if his mind had been divided into 10 neat parts, and each part was as strong as when it was at its peak. It was as if 9 copies had been made. Furthermore, these 10 complete consciousnesses were all under his control. It was as if he had 9 bodies in addition to his original body. Control. It was a feeling of being in control. The 10 wills of 1 heart. In a split second, 100 sword lights were controlled by Chen Zong. They instantly contracted and condensed into the ultimate heart phaseless sword. Chen Zong opened his hands and flicked his 10 fingers. The ultimate heart phaseless sword light flickered endlessly. In a split second, it seemed to split into 2, then 3, 4 until 10. The 10 ultimate heart phaseless swords swallowed and spat out sword light, emitting an incomparably sharp sharpness. It was as if they could pierce through everything. The tips of the swords pointed forward, locking onto the 10 10-star barbarian warriors. A creepy feeling suddenly spread in the hearts of the 10 barbarian warriors, lingering endlessly. They did not understand why one sword suddenly turned into 10. If it was an illusion, it would not be a big deal. But in their perception, it was not an illusion. It was real. There were really 10 swords. This was the true mystery of the ultimate heart phaseless sword. Ultimate heart following the heart, phaseless all things. The wider the heart, the more wonderful the sword. The 10 ultimate heart phaseless swords were real. They were the power stimulated by the heart and soul. It was a profound mystery. At the same time, Chernzong's mind power was being consumed at an astonishing speed. It was 100 times faster than usual. It was not 10 times as Chernzong had expected. The consumption rate was astonishing, and he could not support it for too long. Then, he had to end it quickly. Kill. As Chernzong's mind moved, 10 sword lights suddenly broke through the air. 10,000 swords in one. The 10 sword lights all performed the first move of the 10,000 swords in one sword technique. The second move, picturesque mountains and rivers. In an instant, 10 sword mountains pressed down on the 10 10-star barbarian warriors. Under the heart and soul, even the sword Tao field seemed to be replicated. That was why the consumption of mind power was so terrifying. It was beyond imagination. But at the same time, its power was even more terrifying, and its consumption was also astonishing. Suppress. The third move, Forest of all trees. The 10 sword lights each turned into dozens of trees that were more than 10 meters tall. There were hundreds of trees in total. They densely covered the area as if they had turned into a small forest, suppressing and trapping the 10 barbarian warriors. Soul refining sword technique, Sword 3. The 10 sword lights were extremely condensed. They pierced through the air and directly penetrated the foreheads of the 10 10-star barbarian warriors, breaking their divine souls. 10 kills with one move. The 10 10-star barbarian warriors were unwilling to give up. They could not even burn their totem power, so they could not make the last desperate attack. This scene also terrified the few human teams that were lurking in the distance. What kind of skill was that? What kind of sword technique was that? It was extremely terrifying. It was really terrifying. They were only at the 10-star level, but they could perform such a terrifying skill. They had never heard of it before. At the same time, Chernzong quickly withdrew the heart and soul refining sword and turned it into one again. He staggered unconsciously, and a strong sense of dizziness swept over him. His heart suddenly contracted, and there was an indescribable tingling feeling. It was as if his heart was pierced and cut by an invisible sharp blade, and it was also as if his heart was being pulled by an invisible and powerful hand. His face was pale, and his eyes were full of fatigue. He felt that he wanted to fall down and have a good sleep. Chernzong knew that it was because he had consumed too much of his divine power. It was the aftereffect. When the heart and soul refining sword technique was activated, it was mysterious and amazing. It was as if there were 10 of him, and even the domain of sword principle would be duplicated. However, the cost was that the divine power was consumed. It was not 10 times as much as he had expected, but 100 times. He did not have such ability when he was using the heart and soul refining sword technique. Although Chernzong felt extremely tired, he did not dare to rest. Instead, he endured the uncomfortable feeling and quickly took out an elixir to recover his consumed strength. He immediately left while recovering and operating the heart and soul refining sword technique to speed up the recovery of the divine power. At first, it was extremely difficult to operate the heart and soul refining sword technique because it consumed too much of his divine power. It was really painful, and he could not speed up at all. It was very slow. Fortunately, he had killed hundreds of barbarian warriors at once, which temporarily relieved the pressure. Hundreds of 8-star and 9-star barbarian warriors were undoubtedly amazing. He had gained thousands of points at once. With the addition of 10 10-star warriors, he had gained another 200 points. Chernzong's battle token was gradually approaching 10,000 points. This speed of gaining points was simply shocking. Let's go. The lurking human clan troops were shocked. They seemed to have thought of something, and their faces changed greatly. They immediately hid and left. Hundreds of barbarian warriors had died here, which would definitely attract more and stronger barbarian warriors. At that time, they might also be discovered, which would be a dead end. However, they were very envious. They had gained thousands of points at once. If it were them, a small team would have to take countless risks to get thousands of points. It was like walking on the edge of life and death. However, that was strength. They could not be envious. It was better to escape first, lest they lose their lives. Chernzong staggered as he flew. As he operated the 33 heavens of mind, the power of his mind gradually recovered. The elixir was dissolved, and his cultivation was gradually restored. His speed gradually increased. Not long after, a light flew across the sky. In the blink of an eye, it flew from afar. The light stopped, revealing an extremely strong body. The body seemed to be made of iron and steel, and it emitted a terrifying wave of energy. It was a barbarian warrior. When he glanced over and saw hundreds of floating corpses, his eyes suddenly emitted a scarlet light. An extremely terrifying wave of energy suddenly exploded from his steel-like body, as if a blazing flame was burning fiercely. Human. Sword cultivator. An extremely shocking roar filled with sharp and terrifying killing intent sounded in an instant, shaking heaven and earth. The killing intent was like a volcanic eruption. This time, hundreds of barbarian warriors were sent out to chase and intercept the human clan sword cultivator. They did not expect that hundreds of 10-star warriors would be killed. Anger, extreme anger. Die. That human clan sword cultivator must die. It would not be enough even if he died 100 times, 1,000 times. An extremely tyrannical aura swept out and permeated the surroundings as he carefully sensed all the aura remnants in the surroundings. The demonic barbarian brave warrior was equivalent to a Yuan demon of the human race. His combat strength was even greater, so he was naturally more sensitive to aura. Sure enough, he sensed some remnant auras of the human clan. However, the barbarian warrior ignored the remnant auras of the human clan and locked onto one of them. It was the aura of the human clan sword cultivator. Chase. No matter what, he could not let the human clan sword cultivator leave alive. Through the remnant aura, he could sense that the human clan sword cultivator's combat strength was at the 10-star level, not the 11-star level. However, he had been able to kill so many barbarian warriors. Judging from the wounds, they had all been killed at the same time. Moreover, there were 10 10-star warriors, which was simply incredible. The human clan sword cultivator had to be a top genius of the human clan. He had amazing talent and potential. If he was allowed to grow, it would definitely not be a good thing for the barbarian race. The human clan sword cultivator had already caused a lot of damage to the barbarian race. Chapter 2176. With the help of the elixir, Chernzong's cultivation recovered quickly, but the recovery of his mind power was much slower. Even if he used the 33 layers of will to speed up the recovery, it couldn't be as fast as his cultivation. This was the disadvantage of mind power, and it couldn't be helped. Compared to others, Chernzong's recovery speed was many times faster. Of course, the Will Heavenly Palace mainly focused on the development and application of mind power, so of course it would pay more attention to recovery speed. Although the 10 wills of one mind is strong, The consumption of mind power 100 times faster is too shocking. Chen Zong recalled, still a little scared. Fortunately, all the strong enemies were killed. Otherwise, he would have been killed in his state at that time. With the 10 wills of one mind, the mind became 10, the extreme heart phaseless sword became 10, the sword principal field became 10, and he could perform 10 sword techniques at the same time. It sounded like this heart formula was indeed very terrifying, but there was also a disadvantage. Cultivation power couldn't be increased. So when Chen Zong performed the 10,000 swords of one mind, and 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 the 10,000 swords of one mind at the same time, the consumption of cultivation power was also 10 times. Fortunately, this sword technique was created by Chen Zong himself, so it was the most suitable for him, so the consumption was the lowest. In addition, the extreme heart phaseless sword's efficient use of power also reduced the consumption. In addition, the power cultivated by the 11th layer of the Taichu sword origin technique was very strong, much stronger than the same cultivation. In addition, the consumption of power for the two sword techniques was different. One was qi refining power, the other was body refining power. Because of this, Chen Zong's power was able to support the instantaneous eruption of the 10,000 swords of one mind and the 10,000 swords of one mind, but he was almost drained. Although the 10 wills of one mind was very strong, the consumption of mind power 100 times faster could only be a trump card, and couldn't be used normally. However, if the 10 wills of one mind were difficult to use, then what about the 2 minds of one mind? He would try it when he was safe. Suddenly, an extremely strong sense of danger grew from the bottom of his heart, like a volcano erupting, instantly exploding. The impact made Chen Zong shudder. Danger. An extremely strong sense of danger swept over, as if it wanted to drown him. This meant that such danger was not something he could withstand, even if he recovered to his peak state. With every breath that passed, the sense of danger that emerged in his heart grew stronger. It was so direct and so intense. It was as if an expert had come specifically to deal with him. He didn't even try to hide it. There was no doubt that it was the barbarian tribe who had come to attack him, and it was someone who had surpassed the warrior level. They were targeting him directly with undisguised murderous intent and anger. That was why he felt such a strong sense of crisis. Chen Zong sighed. Originally, he did not intend to use this secret treasure, but now, he had to use it. It was a pity that the blood fiend explosion original seed was constantly absorbing and condensing the murderous aura. However, its current power was only able to blow up a 10-star level. It was not even an 11-star level, let alone a demonic barbarian hero level. Since there was an attack from a demonic barbarian hero, Chen Zong simply did not run away. Instead, he stopped and fully operated the 33 Heavens of Mind technique to accelerate the recovery of the power of the mind. A silver-white blade the length of a finger appeared in his hand. The blade looked ordinary, but it contained an extremely terrifying power. It was the reward Chen Zong had obtained after challenging the 100 stages of the White Jade City's infinite battles. It was a one-time use artifact that was as high as a middle-grade spiritual divine artifact. The sense of crisis grew stronger and stronger, like a surging tide, bombarding him. The surrounding void seemed to be stirred up, shaking endlessly. The feeling of suffocation spread, increasing the pressure on Chen Zong. Taking a deep breath, Chen Zong calmed his almost wildly beating heart. His eyes stared ahead, which was the direction of the source of the crisis. Sure enough, a black light appeared and approached in an instant, turning into a figure. The figure was wrapped in a layer of pale red flames, burning fiercely and releasing a terrifying aura. The flames were like the materialization of killing intent, the burning of anger. It could be seen how angry the demonic barbarian hero was. The scarlet light emitted from his eyes seemed to be stained with blood. The red light burst out, making Chen Zong's heart tremble unconsciously. His pupils shrank to the size of needles in an instant, and the strong sense of crisis soared to the extreme in an instant. The killing intent was about to drown Chen Zong. Break out! Chen Zong slashed out with his sword. The third move of the 10,000 swords returned to origin sword technique, Forest of 1,000 trees. Trees more than 10 meters tall fell from the sky, and dozens of them covered the surroundings in an instant. However, this had no effect on the demonic barbarian hero at all. With a wave of his hand, he directly tore down the trees. In the next moment, Chen Zong swung his left hand, and a silver light burst out, like a cold lightning across the sky. It was the small silver-white blade. It turned into a flying knife, and turned into a thunderbolt, instantly bursting out with an astonishing speed. Fast. Extremely fast. Incomparably fast. Although the demonic barbarian hero was full of killing intent and raged, and he paid enough attention to Chen Zong, he was helpless because that was a one-time secret treasure. It was a mid-tier spirit artifact. A one-time secret treasure meant that it could only be used once, and it also meant that all of its power would burst out in one use, releasing an astonishing power. A spirit artifact corresponded to the origin underworld stage. The power of a one-time spirit artifact completely reached the level of a origin underworld stage powerhouse. The demonic barbarian hero's hair stood on end as it swept over in an instant. When he noticed it, he saw a dazzling silver lightning break through the sky in an instant. The demonic barbarian hero's pupils shrank to the size of needles, and he immediately burst out with a tyrannical power. The totem on his body lit up in an instant, burning like a flame that was almost solid. The silver light flickered, and the cold lightning broke through the sky, directly attacking. When it hit the flame formed by the totem power, it paused for a moment, then burst out with an astonishing light, and its speed increased sharply. Piercing. The demonic barbarian hero's body was penetrated in an instant, and the flying blade also exploded in his body, turning into countless fine blades that wreaked havoc in his body. It was as if he was being cut into pieces. The demonic barbarian hero couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. Chen Zong took advantage of this opportunity to attack with his sword. Heart-refining sword art. Sword 3. The sword light broke through the sky and hit the demonic barbarian hero, but it was difficult to kill him or even cause any damage. Chen Zong's expression was solemn, and he attacked again without hesitation. One heart-refining sword art. In an instant, the extreme heart-phaseless sword split into two and attacked at the same time. Heart-refining sword art. Sword 3. At this moment, the demonic barbarian hero was resisting the terrifying blade energy that was wreaking havoc in his body. In the face of Chen Zong's attack, he simply couldn't dodge or attack. He was reduced to a sitting duck. If he didn't attack now, when would he? Kill. After the heart-refining technique reached the second level of the heart-refining technique, the heart-refining 2 minds was obviously different from the previous heart-refining 2 minds. Before the heart-refining technique reached the second level, the heart-refining 2 minds could only be used to assist in cultivation. Moreover, the consumption of the heart-refining 2 minds was much lower than the consumption of the heart-refining 10 minds. Chen Zong was most suitable to use the heart-refining sword art against the demonic barbarian hero who was reduced to a sitting duck, because this sword art was a sword art that could break all skills with one sword. It was a sword art that focused on attacking and killing. If the heart-refining 2 minds couldn't do anything, then he would use the heart-refining 5 minds. The consumption of the heart-refining 5 minds was definitely many times greater than the consumption of the heart-refining 2 minds, but it was still inferior to the heart-refining 10 minds. Even if he used it, he could save some energy, unlike the last time when he was so weak and exhausted. The heart-refining 5 minds. In an instant, the extreme heart phaseless sword split into 5 swords, each of which bloomed with astonishing sharpness. The sword chi was threatening as it traversed the sky. Heart refining sword art. Sword 3. Kill. 5 extremely condensed sword chi broke through the sky in an instant. The sword chi linked together and hit the same point. After the first sword light was shattered, the second sword light immediately arrived. Following that, the third sword light arrived in an instant. In this way, sword chi after sword chi, coupled with the terrifying power of the flying dagger artifact, madly attacked the demonic barbarian hero, making his resistance weaker and weaker. The fifth sword chi did not break, but pierced through the demonic barbarian hero's body. The sword chi collided with the saber chi in his body. Although the sword chi was not as powerful as the saber chi, it was like adding oil to the fire, causing the saber chi to become more violent. The demonic barbarian hero could not help but vomit blood. "Damn you!" With a roar that lacked language, like a cry of despair, the demonic barbarian hero's totemic power suddenly burned brightly. Chen Zong's heart could not help but jump. He opened his heart perception and spirit movement ring and attacked with 2 swords as fast as he could. Heart refining sword art. Sword 3. The sword chi attacked directly from the demonic barbarian hero's wound. The saber chi in the demonic barbarian hero's totemic power instantly stopped burning, and the saber chi in his body more than doubled. It directly tore his body apart, and blood continued to spurt out. Under the terrible power of the flying dagger artifact, all the demonic barbarian hero's means of resistance were broken. In the end, he was killed by Chen Zong. Death. Descending. The demonic barbarian hero was extremely unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. Who knew that this human race sword cultivator had such a terrifying means? The moment the demonic barbarian hero died, Chen Zong could feel that the battle merits in his battle token had increased significantly. However, Chen Zong did not check it immediately. Instead, he immediately took out a medicinal pill and ran his cultivation art to refine it. Chapter 2177. Please guarantee a minimum monthly vote. The number 9 Light War Zone was one of the hundreds of Light War Zones. There were 10 demon barbarian warriors in the tribe. Although there weren't many of them, they were very precious. In the depths of the tribe, there was a giant pillar that was dozens of meters wide and thousands of meters tall. The pillar was bronze in color and seemed to be modeled by the passage of time. There were countless carvings on the giant pillar, and if one looked carefully, they seemed to be the reflection of hundreds of beasts. They were lifelike and carried with them boundless power. This was the totem pole of the demon barbarian tribe. There seemed to be hundreds of beasts circling around the totem pole. The eyes of each beast were burning with blazing flames. Suddenly, the flames in the eyes of one of the beasts were extinguished and the entire totem pole shook violently. The sound of wind breaking could be heard as several extremely strong figures flew over. When they saw the extinguished flames on the head of one of the giant beasts, their expressions changed greatly. They were extremely shocked and furious. This meant that one of the demon barbarian warriors had died. What's going on? Could it be a joint attack by the Yuan demon race? It must be a plot by the Yuan demon race. The number 9 war fortress of the human race was separated from them by a great distance. They knew that there were 10 Yuan demons in the number 9 war fortress, and had fought them before. Therefore, they were very clear about the strength of the other party. It would be very difficult to kill a demon barbarian warrior one-on-one with such combat strength, unless 2 of them joined forces. Now that one of the demon barbarian warriors had died, it meant that at least 2 Yuan demons had joined forces. The demon barbarian tribe was good at fighting and innately strong. This was something that the human race couldn't compare to. If it weren't for some restrictions that prevented them from entering this void, the human race would have already been crippled. Even so, they had still managed to occupy a star system and more than half of the other 2 star systems. Their reinforcements were limited and their military strength was insufficient. This was the limit of what the demon barbarian tribe could do. In the light war zones, warriors were the main force. Warriors were only auxiliary. Only the medium war zones were warriors. In the light war zones, the death of a warrior was a great loss. Anger. Rage. Before long, someone brought back the corpse of the demon barbarian warrior. They were shocked by the results of the examination. The injuries on the body couldn't be faked. Even though the demonic barbarian hero's body had been cut by the saber energy, and the power of the saber energy was so strong that it shocked them, the real fatal injury was the sword wound. Or rather, he had been killed by the sword with the help of the terrifying blade force. After examination, the sword chi left behind by the sword wound was only at the warrior level. After careful examination, it should be at the level of the 10-star level, not at the 11-star level. The demon barbarian warrior had been killed by the human race's demon barbarian warriors. Demons. Of the demon barbarian warriors. If the human barbarian warriors were, they would be killed. The level of morale was often related to the outcome of a battle. In a situation where the difference in combat strength was not absolutely obvious, if the morale was high, it was possible to turn the tables and turn defeat into victory. Upon further inspection, he found that many of the dead demon barbarian warriors had the same residual sword chi on their sword wounds. This human's potential is shocking. We must kill him. The barbarian flood dragon warrior's eyes shone with a cold light. We must kill him as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be another North Dao Sky Wolf in the future. The barbarian braves all looked solemn and full of fear at the mention of the Northern Celestial Wolf. The name of the Northern Celestial Wolf was like a nightmare to the barbarian race. Let's start the war. One of the barbarian tortoise warriors suddenly spoke up. His voice was low and hoarse, but it was filled with determination. No matter what, we have to kill that human sword cultivator. Otherwise, another Northern Dao Sky Wolf might appear. No one wants to see that. Start the war. War! The remaining 9 demon barbarian warriors unanimously agreed. War. The barbarian flood dragon warrior took out a bronze spiral whistle and blew into it. The whistle resounded through the world. It was like a thunderclap, like the roar of ancient times, or the roar of thousands of beasts. Suddenly, it resounded through the world and shook the world. In the northern district of the 9th battle zone, the whistle resounded through the world. All the demon barbarian warriors in the northern district heard it. They were all stunned at first, then became excited. The horn of berserk war has been blown. A demon barbarian warrior's face was filled with excitement. The war is about to start. I've been waiting for a long time. War, war, war. The demon barbarian race was different from the human race. They were good at fighting. They had the concept of fighting since they were babies. As they grew stronger, they would fight all kinds of battles when they were young. Although the small teams and the human race's hunting battles were good, it couldn't satisfy the demon barbarian race's desire to fight. However, the human race wasn't weak. Once the war started, the human race would suffer heavy casualties, and so would the demon barbarian race. It wasn't surprising that they would lose 800 of their own. But now, the war was finally about to start. The horn was the berserk war horn of the demon barbarian race. It wasn't used lightly. Once it was blown, it meant that the war was about to start. The berserk war horn had a unique mystery. Once it was blown, all the demon barbarians in the battle zone would hear it, no matter how far away they were. On the contrary, other races couldn't hear it if they were far away. Rather than calling it a sound, it was better to call it a strange fluctuation that belonged to the demon barbarian race. Assemble! The human race teams in hiding suddenly discovered that the demon barbarian race teams were retreating back to their tribes. They all looked hurried, as if something big was about to happen. Chernzong didn't know that his trip to the northern district would cause so much trouble that the demon barbarian race would have no choice but to start a war in order to eliminate future troubles. A storm was brewing. In the southern district's battle fort, a group of Yuan underworld martialists suddenly felt uneasy for some reason, as if something bad was about to happen. Chernzong rushed out of the north district, crossed the barrier, and entered the south district. It was a peaceful journey, but for some reason, a heavy feeling lingered in his heart, as if a mountain was pressing down on him, almost suffocating him. This feeling wasn't the same as the feeling of danger. Puzzled, Chernzong checked the battle merits in his battle token. Coupled with the more than 1,000 battle merits he had previously obtained, as well as the continuous killing of the demon barbarian warriors in the northern district and the final killing of the demon barbarian warrior, his battle merits had exceeded 10,000. It seemed that the speed at which he gained battle merits was very fast, and it was indeed so. In a short period of time, he had gained over 10,000 battle merits, which was very shocking. However, only Chernzong himself knew how dangerous it was. The slightest carelessness could have cost him his life. In particular, he had been pursued by the demon barbarian warrior at the end. If he hadn't possessed a secret treasure, he might not have been able to survive, let alone counterattack. The demon barbarian warrior's combat strength should have been at the 2-star level, as Chernzong had obtained 200 battle merits. 10,000 battle merits. After returning to the battle fort, I will immediately exchange them for my realm clone at the eternal battle fort, Chernzong thought to himself as his eyes flickered. This feeling came from the bottom of his heart. Chernzong felt that the realm clone should be very useful to him. His strength had completely recovered, and his mind power was slowly recovering as well. Chernzong continued to advance from the outermost ring of the southern district to the middle ring, and finally entered the inner ring. In an instant, Chernzong felt a terrifying aura pressing down on him from afar, as if it had locked onto him and wanted to suppress him. When he looked back, he saw 9 figures. Each of them was emitting an astonishing aura. When combined, it was very terrifying, as if an invisible sea was surging endlessly. Among them, there were a few familiar faces that left a deep impression on Chernzong. One of them had a slight smile on his face. At first, he looked very sincere and easily gained the trust of others. However, in Chernzong's eyes, he was like Su Wei. The other one had a domineering look on his face, as if he was the sole ruler of the world. The Big Dipper Battle Team. Seeing the Big Dipper Battle Team, Chernzong's expression didn't change, but a trace of anger flashed in his heart. He wouldn't forget that palm strike from back then. Retracting his gaze, Chernzong didn't say anything or do anything, because even now, he had comprehended the 10 intents of heart, and he wasn't confident that he could defeat the other party. The difference between a 10-star and an 11-star was still very obvious. However, the other party's cultivation had already reached the peak of the 9th transformation Dao manipulation realm, and there was no way for him to improve further. On the other hand, he was only at the 6th transformation Dao manipulation realm, and there was still a lot of room for improvement. Chernzong retracted his gaze and ignored the people of the Big Dipper battle team. However, there were still sounds of conversation. "Is that the genius of the Heavenly Will Palace that you mentioned? He doesn't look like much." "Haha, the Heavenly Will Palace is very famous, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are stronger than others." All kinds of casual and mocking comments were constantly heard. Chernzong didn't get angry, nor did he have any other reaction, because there was no need for it. Whether the Heavenly Will Palace was strong or weak wasn't something that a few geniuses could judge. They admitted that the Heavenly Will Palace wouldn't become stronger, but they denied that it wouldn't become weaker either. Therefore, no matter how they judged or belittled it, it wouldn't hurt the Heavenly Will Palace at all. Of course, as a disciple of the Heavenly Will Palace, he was somewhat displeased to hear these comments. However, arguing was never Chen Zong's forte. In the future, when the battle was decided, they would know why the Heavenly Will Palace was the number one in the void. Soon, Chen Zong entered the battle fort and returned to his room. He opened the exchange interface and made the exchange without hesitation. Because Chen Zong had the eternal token of heaven and earth, he could use it as a medium to find his avatar of heaven and earth. This was also one of the identification methods of the Eternal Battle Fort. After all, the Eternal Battle Fort had given out many tokens over the countless years. Many people had obtained the token's consciousness and energy avatars. However, some of them had died. Some of them had become disciples of other factions, and only some of them had truly become disciples of the Eternal Battle Fort. Those who weren't disciples of the Eternal Battle Fort had left their avatars in the Eternal Battle Fort. If they wanted to obtain them, they would have to use other means. Chapter 2178. In the meeting hall of Fort Number 9, 10 figures with astonishing auras took their seat. I've already investigated clearly. The demonic barbarian warriors are retreating inwards. They should be returning to the tribe. One of the figures was a Yuan underworld powerhouse. His voice was indescribably erratic. I don't know the exact reason. I can't get too close or I'll be discovered. The demonic barbarian warriors are suddenly retreating into the tribe. This is abnormal. The group of people muttered to themselves, pondering why this was abnormal. Suddenly, the mild-mannered old man seemed to think of something and his expression changed drastically. Oh no, the demonic barbarian race might start a war. War! What? Impossible! How dare they? In an instant, the Yuan underworld powerhouses reacted violently because of the word war. War. It sounded simple, but it wasn't, especially for those who had experienced war. They knew how cruel it was. Even those who hadn't experienced it knew very well what it was like. War was all about killing and death. The battlefield was a meat grinder where people died at every moment. It was very cruel and tragic. No one was willing to start a war, as no one could guarantee that they would survive until the end. Perhaps the difference in strength had an impact, but it wasn't absolute. The situation of a war could change in an instant and anyone could die. The demonic barbarian race? That shouldn't be the case. The voice sounded a little uncertain. Although the demonic barbarian race was warlike, they knew very well how cruel war was and wouldn't start a war easily. However, such an abnormal gathering seemed to be the prelude to war. However, it didn't take long for everyone's worries to become a reality. In the northern district of Battle Zone Number 9, a large black mass flew rapidly towards the southern district like a dark cloud covering the sky. Those were the demonic barbarian warriors. They had gathered into an army and an astonishingly ferocious aura emanated from the demonic barbarian warriors. That aura contained an indescribable excitement. It seemed that every demonic barbarian warrior was excited. War wasn't easily started, but once it started, it would be like a thunderstorm. At that moment, almost all the demonic barbarian warriors had gathered. Under the leadership of 10 demonic barbarian warriors, they rushed towards the isolation belt in the northern and southern districts. The meteors in the isolation zone were a threat to warriors, but they posed no threat to bravehearts. With a single strike, they shattered all of them and cleared out a path for bravehearts to move forward. The army was vast and mighty like a surging tide, surging endlessly. The demonic barbarian warriors had gathered and advanced into the southern district. It was impossible for the human race not to discover this. They were shocked and immediately ordered all the battle teams to assemble. At this moment, there were 2 figures in the room that Chen Zong had been assigned to in the battle fortress. The strange thing was that the 2 figures were both Chen Zong. It was like looking into a mirror. Of course, their robes were different. More importantly, their eyes were different. One of them, Chen Zong, had a dull and lifeless look in his eyes. The one with dull eyes was Chen Zong. It was Chen Zong's doppelganger. Originally, if Chen Zong had joined the Eternal Battle Fort, he could have gotten this doppelganger directly and cultivated it into a real doppelganger. Its strength wouldn't be inferior to the original body. However, those who didn't belong to the Eternal Battle Fort couldn't cultivate it even if they had a doppelganger. They could only absorb it. It was a pity that he couldn't cultivate it into a doppelganger. This kind of doppelganger was different from Azura's doppelganger. Anyway, since he couldn't cultivate it, Chen Zong didn't think too much about it. He couldn't leave the Heavenly Palace and join the Eternal Battle Fort just because of the doppelganger cultivation method. Since he couldn't cultivate it into a doppelganger, he could only refine it and absorb it. Cultivating a doppelganger was like having an extra life. It was like having a trump card. But it needed time, so the effect was relatively slow. If he absorbed it, he could strengthen himself in a short period of time. Under normal circumstances, it was better to cultivate a doppelganger in the long run. But there were no absolutes in the world. Chen Zong activated his cultivation method. In an instant, the primordial sword essence surged like a great river, sweeping over in a mighty manner. It instantly covered his entire body, and a powerful suction force suddenly erupted. In an instant, it absorbed the clone in front of him. The doppelganger shone brightly like a small sun. It emitted a dazzling light that shone in all directions. In an instant, streams of pure black and white spiritual essence gushed out from the doppelganger. They turned into strands and shot out like thousands of spiritual essences. They flew towards Chen Zong and wrapped around Chen Zong. In an instant, Chen Zong was entangled by the black and white spiritual essences and turned into a black and white cocoon. It was like a cocoon that was waiting to break out. The doppelganger disappeared and turned into pure energy. It wrapped Chen Zong's entire body. The extremely pure energy kept flowing into Chen Zong's body. In fact, the energy of this doppelganger had not reached the path manipulation realm. But it was extremely pure. It was not inferior to the path manipulation realm at all. After all, it had been passively absorbing the energy of the world to temper itself on a star in the Eternal Battle Fort. Because the doppelganger had not broken through to the path manipulation realm, it was easier to absorb. Of course, the corresponding benefits were also smaller. The black and white spiritual essences were decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. They were all absorbed by Chen Zong. Chen Zong was completely immersed in his cultivation, forgetting everything else. That feeling was wonderful, incomparably wonderful. His body felt like it was being rubbed gently. There was an indescribable feeling. It was a little painful but also very comfortable. He was in a kind of intertwining between ice and fire. Unknowingly, Chen Zong's spiritual body was improving. Correspondingly, the sword origin was also being purified bit by bit and became stronger. Chen Zong was completely unaware of everything that was happening outside. Chen Zong did not know about the battle order because he was completely immersed in cultivation. At this moment, in the southern district, in front of the Eternal Battle Fort, many battle teams had gathered. What happened? So many battle teams have gathered. Is there something big going on? The cultivators who had gathered were all guessing. A group gathering like this was very rare. It had not been seen for many years. It could be said that basically no one had experienced it before. Because they would not stay here all year round. Usually they would serve. Whether they continued to stay after that was up to their own free will. Of course, there were also some rogue cultivators who wanted to use their battle merits to exchange for cultivation items, so that they could improve themselves more quickly. But the battlefield was dangerous. Although many rogue cultivators exchanged their battle merits for cultivation items to improve themselves, it was inevitable that they would die in the danger. It was cruel and tragic. Therefore, when the battle order was issued, everyone rushed over. However, they were secretly guessing. At most, they guessed that there might be something big going on, but they did not think that it was a war. That felt a little far-fetched. According to what everyone knew, the 9th Battle Fort had been infiltrating each other in the form of battle teams to wear each other down. Although it was called a battlefield, large-scale wars rarely occurred. For a moment, everyone expressed their opinions and opinions. Xingtian Battle Team is here. Suddenly, someone exclaimed. Xingtian Battle Team. Where is it? The surrounding people who were discussing spiritedly paused and looked over. In the 9th Battle Fort, there were many battle teams formed by cultivators. There were differences in the number of members and strength of the battle teams. Wherever there were people, there would be competition, whether it was visible or not. Therefore, among the battle teams, the 10 most powerful battle teams were selected and called the top 10 battle teams. The strength of the top 10 battle teams was not clearly defined because their strength was on par with each other. Even so, the top 10 battle teams were very powerful. They all had at least one 11-star battle team expert, and the rest were all 10-star battle teams. However, there were not many of them, not more than 10 of them. They walked the path of the elite. Those who were not 10-star battle teams were not qualified to join. Moreover, if a 10-star battle team expert wanted to join, they would need to pass an assessment. The Xingtian battle team was one of the top 10 battle teams. There were thousands of battle teams, but there were only 10 that were publicly recognized as the strongest. Moreover, the Xingtian battle team was ranked in the top 3. Among the top 10 battle teams, the Big Dipper battle team was publicly recognized as number 1. As for number 2 and number 3, there was no such thing. The Xingtian battle team and the Collapsing Heavens battle team could both be considered as number 2 and number 3. Because the strength of these two battle teams was similar, they both had 2 11-star battle team experts. As for the other 7 battle teams, they all had an 11-star battle team expert. It was difficult to differentiate their rankings. Normally, the top 10 battle teams would not stay in the battle fort. Instead, they would go out and sneak into the North District to hunt demon barbarian warriors. It was very rare to see them. Unlike now, the Xingtian battle team and the Collapsing Heavens battle team had appeared. These two battle teams were ranked at the same level. Unknowingly, a type of competition had formed. Now, the Xingtian battle team and the Collapsing Heavens battle team had appeared. They stood facing each other and an invisible aura spread out, stirring up the surroundings. Following which, the other 7 powerful auras came from all directions. Compared to the Xingtian battle team and the Collapsing Heavens battle team, they were only slightly inferior. However, they were far superior to the other battle teams. The top 7 battle teams. They had appeared. The tyrannical auras swept over, causing everyone to be shocked. The auras of the top 9 battle teams clashed with each other. The void seemed to have turned into a large river, rippling endlessly. The atmosphere became incomparably tense and solemn in an instant. It gave people a feeling that a storm was about to come. Suddenly, an even more powerful aura descended. With an incomparably tyrannical attitude, it charged straight for the kill. It was extremely tyrannical and domineering. It had an astonishing aura of supremacy that could crush everything. The Big Dipper battle team had descended. The top 10 battle team, the top 10 battle team, the top 10,000 battle team had descended. Chapter 2179. In front of the fortress, 10 figures with strong auras appeared, suppressing the auras of the 10 battle teams. The barbarian tribe is here. The war is about to begin. Everyone, get ready. Wait for orders. General Zhan Long, the leader of the 10 generals, said loudly. His voice reached everyone's ears, and his cloak rustled in the wind. War! The army is here. All of a sudden, the cultivators of the battle teams were stunned. The news was too shocking. Even the 9 members of the Big Dipper battle team were shocked. War! What a distant word. Although this place was called a battlefield, a real war hadn't started for many years. Only when the barbarian tribe invaded the Tylo Star area did a war that lasted for thousands of years, resulting in countless casualties. War made people tremble. It was a feeling of dread, nervousness, and anticipation. It was an extremely special feeling. General Jean Long was concise and didn't say anything unnecessary. He waved his hand, and his red cloak fluttered like a war flag. Let's go. Since the barbarian tribe was here, the humans couldn't just sit around and wait for death. They gathered their battle teams and marched forward. As for Chernzong, he was still refining the power of the clone. Although the clone hadn't reached the spirit realm yet, it still needed some time to refine it. After all, the power was very condensed. Therefore, Chernzong didn't know what was happening outside, let alone that the war was coming. Advance. The human battle teams gathered and marched toward the North District. The murderous aura gathered quietly and gradually spread out. The barbarian tribe's army moved suddenly and quickly. They crossed the North-South District's barrier and pushed into the South District's outer ring. The two armies faced each other. The barbarian tribe's army and the humans' army met in the South District's outer ring. However, they didn't charge at each other directly. Instead, they faced each other with a distance of 10,000 meters. The human battle teams gathered. Although they looked like a big army, they were still in small groups. On the contrary, the barbarian tribe's battle teams were all scattered and gathered into a real army. They looked well trained. Of course, it couldn't be said that the humans were inferior to the barbarian tribe. Each had its own merit. The barbarian tribe's army was more cohesive. Once they charged, they would be unstoppable. However, the human battle teams weren't as good as the barbarian tribe's army in a head-on charge, but they were more flexible. The two armies faced each other. The battle hadn't started yet, but the shocking auras kept surging out. They collided with each other from 10,000 meters away. As they surged, they seemed to turn into a raging storm. Whooshing. The rumbling sound shook the nine heavens, as if it could topple mountains and overturn seas. Of the barbarian tribe's army. The 9 demon barbarian warriors were at the forefront, and their auras were the most powerful. However, the 10 great generals of the human race were secretly surprised. Shouldn't the other party also be 10 bravehearts? To hide of. General Jean Long took the lead. His gaze was sharp and dignified as he looked over. His voice was deep and powerful, like rolling thunder. The 10 generals frowned. They were in deep thought. The barbarian tribe didn't hesitate to gather their army and start a war just for one person in the number 9 battle fort? No matter how one listened to it, it sounded unbelievable. Who? General Jean Long frowned. It was one thing to hand over the person, but he was very curious. He had to find out. The others were also very curious. Who was it that made the barbarian tribe gather their army? A human sword cultivator. He should be at the 10-star level. The barbarian tribe warrior sneered. He didn't know Chernzong's name. He only knew that he was at the 10-star level and was a sword cultivator. A sword cultivator at the 10-star level? Everyone was stunned. There were tens of thousands of human cultivators in the number 9 battle fort, and many of them were sword cultivators. Some of them were at the 10-star level. Therefore, a sword cultivator at the 10-star level wasn't enough to find the person. Why are you looking for him? General Jean Long asked again. He snuck into the northern district and killed thousands of our warriors, including dozens of 10-star warriors. He even killed one of our warriors. He deserves to die. The barbarian tribe warrior's voice was filled with killing intent and hatred. Compared to the human race, the barbarian race's thoughts were not as complicated. They directly said such things. If it were the human race, they would definitely think carefully and find another reason to cover it up, instead of saying it so directly. What? The humans were all shocked. Who? Who was it? Who was so powerful? He snuck into the northern district and killed thousands of barbarian tribe warriors, including dozens of 10-star warriors and a barbarian tribe warrior? No wonder there were only 9 barbarian tribe warriors. So, who was it? Which sword cultivator had such a shocking record? Everyone in the human team looked at each other in dismay. The 10-star sword cultivators were the center of attention. It wasn't me. It wasn't me either. I want to do it, but I can't. The 10-star sword cultivators shook their heads and denied it. How glorious would it be to kill so many barbarian tribe warriors? Unfortunately, it wasn't them. If you don't hand him over, I will start a war, the barbarian tribe warrior said angrily. War! 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 The army of the barbarian tribe raised their arms and roared. Their momentum was earth-shattering and terrifying. Their momentum suppressed the human tribe for a while. Their ferocious power was astonishing. If you want to fight, then let's fight. The great general of the cold wave took a step forward. A terrifying aura gushed forth like tidal waves, pressing down on Qin Wentian. If you want to fight, then let's fight. If you want to fight, then let's fight. If you want to fight, then let's fight. The humans are not afraid. Although the 10 Yuan underworld generals knew the cruelty of war and didn't want to start a war, they wouldn't avoid it. They would face it head-on. The human race had stood tall in the void for so long. God knew how many calamities they had gone through, but they had managed to tide through them all because of the tenacity of the human race. In an instant, the humans' momentum rose and they were on par with the barbarian tribe army. It seems like you are not willing to hand him over. The barbarian tribe warrior's face darkened. He looked even more furious. Fight! With a wave of his hand, the barbarian tribe immediately charged forward. Kill! General Zhang Long waved his hand and gave the order. The human race battle team immediately advanced and began to move rapidly. The war had begun. Battle cries shook the sky and murderous aura surged. The distance of 10,000 meters was crossed in an instant. The 10 generals and the 9 barbarian tribe warriors immediately clashed. As soon as they clashed, there were casualties. Although there were only tens of thousands of human cultivators and tens of thousands of barbarian warriors, each of them was powerful and imposing. Once they clashed, the power would be terrifying to the extreme. The cruelty of war was on display. In Chen Zong's room in the fortress, the black and white threads around him gradually faded. Strands of them entered Chen Zong's body and were refined and absorbed, turning into his own. When the last black and white thread was absorbed by Chen Zong, a black and white brilliance flashed across Chen Zong's body. It was like flowing water. There was an indescribable mystery as it entered his body. His body shook, and an extremely mysterious aura spread out. There was a kind of emptiness and sharpness in it. That ethereal aura seemed to be as high as the sky. That sharpness seemed to pierce through the 9 heavens. In the next moment, all the aura was withdrawn into his body. Chen Zong opened his eyes and a bright light shot out from them. It was extremely shocking. Soon after, he sensed his body and a smile hung on the corners of his mouth. Indeed, refining and absorbing the power of heaven and earth had brought him many benefits. First of all, his cultivation had broken through unknowingly and reached the 7th transformation Tao controlling realm. However, his body-refining cultivation was still at the 6th transformation divine body realm. It was a little lacking. But the biggest gain was his spiritual body. The Taichu sword origin body was originally a high-level spiritual body. Now that it had broken through, it had become a top-level spiritual body. When the high-level spiritual body erupted, it could increase the power of the sword origin by 90%. When the top-level Taichu sword origin spirit body erupted, it could increase the power by 120%. It was 20% more than an ordinary top-level spiritual body. The breakthrough in his cultivation and the enhancement of his spiritual body had allowed Chen Zong's combat power to improve further. He was even closer to the 11-star level. Then, Chen Zong checked the battle order and saw the message in it. Gather. Chen Zong muttered to himself. He was a little confused, but he still left the battle fortress. As soon as he left the battle fortress, Chen Zong immediately felt that something was wrong. The aura in the air had a kind of desolation and indescribable brutality. There seemed to be wisps of the smell of blood floating in the air. Chen Zong's brows furrowed even more. His figure flashed, and he burst out at an astonishing speed. He turned into a sword light and swept across the sky like lightning. He kept flying outward. The further he flew, the stronger the desolation and the smell of blood became. Finally, Chen Zong saw the battle in front of him. It was a large-scale battle. His pupils shrank to the size of needles. War. It was a war between the barbarians and the humans. Unlike the previous battle teams, it was a war of tens of thousands against tens of thousands. It was almost all the forces in the 9th battle zone. Unknowingly, Chen Zong's heart was a little agitated. Kill. Chen Zong's figure flashed, and he directly charged into the battlefield with his sword. This was because there was a rule in the northern battle zone. Once the war started, the battle merits would be doubled. In other words, killing a 1-star combatant would give 1 battle merit. During the war, it would become 2 points. This would make it easier to obtain battle merit. There were many treasures in the northern battle zone that could be exchanged. Most of these treasures were jointly provided by various major forces. Chapter 2180. The war was cruel and tragic. The barbarian warriors charged forward without any fear of death. Their roars were earth-shattering. They attacked again and again. The might of their attacks was incomparably tyrannical. They were extremely astonishing. They were like a meat grinder on the battlefield. They were constantly pushing forward. The human clan's troops kept wandering around. At first, they were stunned by the barbarian army and suffered a lot of casualties. However, they quickly reacted and divided the barbarian army like sharp blade. When the barbarian army was united, they were extremely terrifying and invincible. However, after being divided, their threat was greatly reduced. At this moment, a sword light streaked across the sky like a lightning bolt. It rushed into the meat grinder-like battlefield in an instant. Kill. The sword light flashed, and a few streaks of blood splattered. It was Chen Zong. He killed 3 people with 1 sword strike. The number of battle merits in the battle token suddenly increased. Chen Zong had used up almost all of his battle merits to exchange for the power of Heaven and Earth clone in the Eternal Battle Fort. He only had dozens of battle merits left. Of course, Exin Tao Master asked Chen Zong to get 100,000 battle merits, not to store 100,000 battle merits in the battle token. He just needed to get them. Even if he used them up, it would still count. Chen Zong originally thought that it would be very difficult to get 100,000 battle merit. However, he got 10,000 battle merits in the previous adventure, so it did not seem that difficult. Especially in the war, he could get twice the battle merits, and it would be faster. Kill, kill, kill. Of course, Chen Zong would not be arrogant. He was very vigilant. The battlefield changed rapidly. If he was careless, he would not only fail to kill the enemy, but he would also be killed. Chen Zong opened his sword Tao field domain. He did not release all of it, but locked it within 100 meters. Everything in the sword Tao field domain was within his perception. Even an 11-star battle strength could not succeed in a sneak attack. Chen Zong would sense it in advance. Moreover, once they entered the sword Tao field domain, they would be affected by the sword Tao field domain and their speed would decrease. Under the sword Tao field domain, Chen Zong's killing speed was astonishingly fast. Every sword strike would take the lives of several barbarian warriors and turn them into battle merit. Soon, Chernzong was targeted by powerful barbarian warriors. Those who were strong would always keep an eye on each other. Firstly, it was to avoid killing those of the same race who were weaker. Secondly, it was to kill each other so that they could obtain more battle merit. Chernzong sensed that a 10-star demon barbarian warrior had broken into the domain of Sword Tao. His face was extremely ferocious, and he attacked fiercely. That attack seemed to be able to break the sky, and it was merciless. It was obvious that he wanted to kill Chernzong with one blow. However, Chernzong had already sensed it when his opponent entered the Sword Tao domain. In the face of this attack, Chernzong did not try to dodge at all. Instead, he turned his sword around to kill. The sword light broke through the air and cut through everything. He didn't need to use the secret technique of Heartfire, nor did he need to use the power of the Taichu sword origin form. Sword of Heart Refinement, Sword 1. Chernzong's cultivation had broken through to the 7th circle of the Tao manipulation realm. As his cultivation increased, so did his combat strength. The sword light pierced through the air and directly pierced through the attack of the 10-star barbarian warrior. It was like a hot knife through butter as it pierced through the barbarian warrior. The demon barbarian warrior's eyes widened. He never thought that he would be killed in such a way. At the same time, Chernzong also received 40 battle merit. A 10-star demon barbarian warrior was worth 20 battle merits. Double the 10-star demon barbarian warrior was worth 40 battle merits. It was a good harvest. The 10 great generals of the human race and the 9 brave warriors of the demon barbarian race were fighting fiercely in the air. The terrifying power shook all directions. They all deliberately left the battlefield to avoid causing harm to others. After all, the aftermath of a battle between Yuan underlings was very powerful. After killing a 10-star barbarian warrior, Chernzong slashed out with his sword. His eyes flashed coldly, and then he turned into a streak of light, shooting towards another 10-star barbarian warrior as if he was riding a sword. His current combat strength was indeed at the 10-star demon barbarian warrior level, but it was at the top level among the 10-star demons. Therefore, he would kill anyone below the 10-star demon barbarian warrior. His main target was the 10-star demon barbarian warrior. After killing several demon barbarian warriors with his sword, countless sword lights flashed and turned into one, piercing through everything. Kill. In an instant, Chernzong's battle merits increased by another batch. The speed of this increase was simply amazing. It was as if he was constantly harvesting. The Big Dipper battle team and other powerful battle teams also swept everything in their path at first. They were invincible and killed many demon barbarian warriors. However, powerful 11-star demon barbarian warriors soon arrived and started a fierce battle. 2 10-star demon barbarian warriors joined forces and attacked from the left and right. They immediately posed a threat to Chernzong, but it was still not enough. Sect returning swords technique, picturesque mountains and rivers. In an instant, the sword mountains descended and directly pressed down. Chernzong displayed the power of mind 2 swords technique. In this way, the consumption of his mind power was not much. The sect returning swords technique's direct lethality was not as good as the heart refining swords technique, but it was not weak either. At least, Chernzong's combat strength was very strong, and his swordsmanship was superb and exquisite. Kill. Another 80 battle merits were obtained. For a time, Chernzong seemed to have become a battlefield harvester, constantly harvesting the lives of the demon barbarian warriors. In addition to Chernzong, there were also some lone warriors among the human clan cultivators with amazing combat strength. Moreover, they never stopped to fight. Instead, they constantly wandered around and killed the demon barbarian warriors with their extremely agile body movement. It wasn't just the humans who were doing this. The barbarian demons were also doing the same thing as Chernzong and the others. Not only were they powerful, but they were also doing the same thing as Chun Zong and the others. One of them was from the barbarian snake tribe. His body movements were extremely strange, and his attacks were very tricky. It was difficult for others to attack him, and every time he attacked, he would kill one or even several people. Another one was from the barbarian elephant tribe. He was so powerful that he was like a chariot pushing forward. When he attacked with his arms, it was as if he could break through everything, and no one could resist him. Another one was from the barbarian ape tribe. He had both strength and speed, and his attacks were more sophisticated. His fists and palms changed constantly, and the power was amazing. The last one was from the barbarian flood dragon tribe, an elite tribe of the demon barbarian tribe. They were powerful and fast, and the power of each of their attacks was extremely terrifying. Their combat strength had reached the level of 11-star. In an instant, Chun Zong felt a chill all over his body. He was being targeted. It was the barbarian snake tribe that was targeting him. There seemed to be a hissing sound constantly, as if a giant snake was approaching. Chen Zong felt a chill, and a slippery feeling came from his neck. The 10-star warrior from the barbarian snake tribe was getting closer, and his eyes were shining with an extremely cold light. He gathered his 5 fingers and slightly bent them like a snake's mouth. In an instant, he was like a poisonous snake waiting for an opportunity to strike. He was as fast as lightning, and directly attacked Chen Zong. Fast. Extremely fast. Not only was his speed fast, but the angle was also very tricky. This was a well-practiced attack, and it was a sure-kill attack. Chen Zong could not help but tense up. Very strong. In an instant, Chen Zong judged that the barbarian snake tribe was a strong opponent. A trace of excitement emerged from his heart. It was more valuable to kill a strong opponent. That kind of value was not only in the battle merits, but also in the belief that one was invincible. If he were to blindly seek out those weaker than him to fight and kill, he would be able to obtain more battle merits, but it would be meaningless to his own cultivation. On the contrary, if he were to develop that kind of habit, he would habitually bully the weak. Over time, he would unknowingly become a weakling. The strong never only had profound cultivation and powerful combat strength, but also had extremely strong belief. Without belief, there was no need to talk about the strong, cultivation, or Taoism. With a flash of sword light, Chun Zong attacked with his sword. It seemed to be an ordinary sword move, but it had an indescribable mysterious trajectory. It actually resisted the extremely strange attack of the barbarian snake tribe warrior. As the sword light flashed, it was as if refined steel had been turned soft. It flowed along the arm of the barbarian snake tribe warrior like a stream of water, and quickly slithered to the spot between his eyebrows. The barbarian snake tribe warrior was shocked. What a brilliant sword technique! How could it be so flexible? However, the strength of the barbarian snake tribe warrior was also very amazing. With a shake of his arm, a terrifying force burst out like a python turning over. After shattering the sword light, he let out an extremely shocking roar. As if he could destroy everything, the barbarian snake tribe warrior opened his mouth and bit Chen Zong's head. Heart fire burn. Heart refining sword technique. Sword 2. Under the heart fire 7 layers, the power of Chen Zong's sword had increased by a lot. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. In an instant, it pierced through the mouth of the giant python and pierced through its body. Under the extremely terrifying sword chi, the barbarian snake tribe warrior's body was shattered inch by inch. The long sword was invincible. It pierced through the throat of the barbarian snake tribe warrior. As the sword chi surged, the barbarian snake tribe warrior's body was immediately torn apart. Death. This scene happened to be seen by the powerful barbarian elephant tribe warrior. The barbarian elephant tribe warrior was using extremely terrifying strength to defeat a 10-star human expert. With an earth-shattering roar, The barbarian elephant tribe warrior's anger erupted like a volcano. With a rumbling sound, the barbarian elephant tribe warrior rushed toward Chen Zong. The extremely arrogant aura made Chen Zong's heart tighten. The threat was even stronger than that of the barbarian snake tribe warrior. 10,000 swords returned to origin sword technique. Forest of 10,000 trees. With a wave of the sword, hundreds of 10-meter-tall sword chi trees fell from the sky and bombarded the barbarian elephant tribe warrior. They suppressed the surroundings and formed a small forest, trapping the barbarian elephant tribe warrior in it. However, the barbarian elephant tribe warrior roared and its arms swelled. In an instant, it blasted out like thunder and destroyed the sword chi trees one after another. Although the barbarian elephant tribe warrior was extremely strong, it was still not enough to completely trap the barbarian elephant tribe warrior. However, Chen Zong's goal was to trap the barbarian elephant tribe warrior for a while. That was enough. Heart-refining sword technique. Sword 3. The barbarian elephant tribe warrior's most powerful sword attack was unleashed in an instant. Its power was incomparably condensed and turned into an incomparably resplendent sword chi that pierced through the sky. Compared to before his cultivation breakthrough, the power of this sword attack was much stronger. Moreover, the timing of this sword attack was incomparably accurate, unique, and astonishing. Chapter 2181. That sword strike was incomparably powerful and unparalleled. The sword light was like the absolute beginning divine thunder that tore through the darkness. Under Chen Zong's precise control of timing, the sword light followed the barbarian elephant warrior's careless opening. Piercing, the extreme heart phaseless sword that had reached the level of a spiritual divine weapon became even sharper. The barbarian elephant warrior's forehead was pierced through. His huge body swayed and fell forward. The sword chi directly crushed everything in his head and scattered his soul. Chen Zong's figure flashed, and he immediately charged at the powerful barbarian ape warrior. Both the 10,000 swords returned to origin and the heart refinement returned to one were unleashed at the same time under the dual intent of one heart, killing the barbarian ape warrior in an extremely tyrannical manner. Die! An explosive shout rang out, bringing with it a shocking killing intent. The 11-star barbarian flood dragon immediately attacked. His attack pierced through the air, extremely ferocious. Chen Zong's body immediately tensed up, and his hair stood on end. So strong. The power of the attack was so strong. It was the full attack of the barbarian flood dragon warrior. Its power was extremely terrifying. Chen Zong only felt that his sword principal domain was constantly being attacked and was about to be torn apart. The attack was like a falling meteor that could destroy everything. His heart sank and a sense of crisis swept over him like a volcanic eruption. Taking a deep breath, Chen Zong was not afraid. He could not dodge the attack, and could only face it with his own strength. The 10,000 swords returned to origin sword technique? No, this sword technique focuses on trapping the enemy. The heart refinement sword technique? No, this sword technique focuses on the power of the attack and condenses it into one point. It was unparalleled. However, there was an obvious gap between their combat strength. Even if he used all his strength, he would not be able to resist. Then, he could only be on the defensive. Fortunately, I have you, Chen Zong muttered to himself. His expression was gentle. His fingers were like a sword and gently touched the extreme heart phaseless sword's spine. Sevenfold heart fire. The power of a top-tier spirit body, the Taichu sword origin body. In an instant, a dot of light lit up on the sword's spine. It was as bright as starlight, following Chen Zong's sword fingers and moving forward along the sword's spine until it reached the tip of the sword. The extreme heart formless sword trembled slightly and let out a series of sword cries, as if it was awakening. A terrifying sharpness lingered and spread out. In the next breath, the extreme heart phaseless sword exploded, turning into many sword lights that scattered in all directions. There were a total of 100 of them. Chunzong's field of sword principle also shrunk to 10 meters in an instant. The sword light lingered around and perfectly integrated with the field of sword principle. The sword light combined with the sword principle domain circled around Chunzong. Every sword light was like a fish or a snake. They were connected head to tail, forming an extremely mysterious trajectory. The trajectory seemed simple, but it covered everything. Everything within 10 meters was covered, forming a sphere that firmly protected Chunzong. There was a beginning and an end, but there was no beginning and no end. The 100 sword lights had completely fused with the field of sword principle. It looked like a flashing sphere that was surrounded by strands of sword chi. In an instant, the barbaric flood dragon with an extremely powerful attack arrived. It was vast and mighty, shattering everything in its path. With a boom, the extremely terrifying attack that was like a meteor smashed into the sword light that had fused with the field of sword principle and the extreme heart phaseless sword. A scene that shocked the barbaric flood dragon appeared. That sword light was actually not destroyed. Instead, it was blocked. The ball of sword light caved inwards under the terrifying attack, but it held on tenaciously. Countless sword chi flowed from the surface of the ball of sword light from all directions like flowing water, endlessly resisting the attack. Then, countless sword chi dissipated from the point of attack, dissipating a trace of the attack power. After shattering, it merged with the surface of the ball of sword light. It was a cycle. This move could not only block the attack, but it could also disperse the attack while blocking it. This move was an ability that came with the extreme heart phaseless sword after it became a spiritual artifact. It was developed by Chunzong and combined with the field of sword principle to form a brand new sword technique. Great Zhou Sword Realm. The Great Zhou Sword Realm was the cycle of the heavens. There was a beginning and an end, and there was no beginning and no end. The Sword Realm was like a world of its own. Naming this move after the Great Zhou Sword Realm was enough to show Chunzong's determination. Now, this move didn't disappoint Chunzong's expectations. A long time ago, Chunzong had been called the Chaotic Origin Sword. That was given to him by others. When Chunzong held the sword in his hand, the 5-foot-long sword circle would never be broken. Its defense was amazing. Even a stronger opponent would find it difficult to break through the defense of Chunzong's sword circle. This also showed that Chunzong had a shocking accumulation in the defense of his sword technique. This accumulation was now combined with the power of the extreme heart phaseless sword and the field of sword principle to form the Great Zhou Sword Realm. With Chunzong's secret cultivation method, the power of this move was greatly increased. It blocked the terrifying attack of an 11-star battle strength. Such power was also beyond Chunzong's expectations. Boom! The barbarian flood dragon attacked for the second time, but it was still blocked by the Great Zhou Sword Realm. Chunzong's strength was also depleted as he continued to block the attacks. It wasn't enough. Perhaps it was because the extreme heart phaseless sword was a divine weapon, but the depletion of his strength wasn't very fast. He could at least hold on for more than 15 minutes under the attack of an 11-star battle strength. But what about 15 minutes later? This was a problem that needed to be considered because Chunzong discovered a flaw. When he used the Great Zhou Sword Realm, he couldn't move at all. He could only stand on the spot and not move. Once he moved, the Great Zhou Sword Realm would disintegrate. Once the Great Zhou Sword Realm disintegrated, he wouldn't be able to block the attack of an 11-star barbarian flood dragon with his own battle strength. Chunzong thought as he defended against the attacks of the barbarian flood dragon. He had already used the spiritual god artifact that he obtained from the White Jade City Challenge. As for his master, wholehearted holy man, he didn't prepare any life-saving measures for him. The only thing he had was the heart-ean treasure robe. As for why he didn't prepare any other life-saving measures for him, it was because this military service was also the test to become a direct disciple of the heavenly palace of will. He had to complete it with his own ability. The elders wouldn't give him any help. Everything depended on his own ability. Every direct disciple of the heavenly palace of will who accepted the test went through the same process. Of course, there were differences between different titles. The difficulty of the test was different. The title that wholehearted holy man gave to Chunzong was the highest. Chunzong didn't know about this. Since it was the highest title, the test was naturally the most difficult. It was extremely dangerous. The slightest carelessness could lead to death. If you want to wear a crown, you have to bear its weight first. He used his cultivation method. While his strength was being consumed, it was also recovering bit by bit. Chunzong even took out some elixirs to help his strength recover faster and to prolong the test. But he couldn't go on like this. Although he had blocked the attack of the barbarian flood dragon, he had also stalled himself. He couldn't kill the barbarian flood dragon and gain battle credit. It was undoubtedly a pity to waste the double battle credit. At the moment, Chunzong couldn't think of a way out. His strongest attack couldn't hurt the barbarian flood dragon at all. Did he have to take a risk? How could he take the risk? He could use the heart-ean treasure robe to block the barbarian flood dragon's strongest attack. The moment the attack hit him, the barbarian flood dragon would reveal a flaw. He could take advantage of that flaw and kill the barbarian flood dragon. However, Chunzong wasn't absolutely sure if he could do it. But even if there was a slight chance, he had to try. Although it was very dangerous on the battlefield, he had to do it. The ninth attack arrived with an extremely terrifying might. When it struck the great heavenly cycle sword realm, sword flashes rippled and caved in inward. Countless sword chi seemed to be pulled to their limits as they began to shatter and shatter. The great Zhou sword realm couldn't hold on any longer and was broken. Once it was broken, there was still a lot of power left in the attack. It rushed toward Chunzong like a hot knife through butter. Chunzong didn't have time to dodge. Chunzong didn't plan to dodge. Instead, he charged forward. The light in his eyes condensed into a beam. It was extremely condensed and pierced into the eyes of the barbarian flood dragon warrior. The barbarian flood dragon warrior was shocked. It was as if his eyes had been pierced. An indescribable sense of panic rose in his heart. In that instant, Chunzong's chest met the terrifying attack of the barbarian flood dragon warrior. There was a loud boom. Although 70% of the attack's power had been weakened, the remaining 30% was still very terrifying. If Chunzong's world divine body hadn't reached the sixth transformation, he wouldn't have been able to withstand it and would have exploded. But now, he had blocked it. Since he had blocked it, it was time to counterattack. 10/10 Heart-refining sword technique. Sword 3. The most powerful sword attack instantly pierced through the air. 10 extremely condensed sword lights joined together to form a straight line as they pierced through the air. This was the most powerful attack that Chunzong could perform. Whether it was the 10/10 attack or the timing, they were all extremely accurate. The barbarian flood dragon warrior didn't have time to dodge and was immediately pierced. His shocking defense couldn't block the extreme heart phaseless sword at all. "You're courting death." The barbarian flood dragon warrior was furious. He was an 11-star warrior, but he was attacked by a 10-star human. In his fury, he immediately ignited his totem power and released an attack that was much more powerful. Boom! It was as if a bolt of lightning had exploded. Chunzong's body trembled uncontrollably. He felt his hair stand on end. He immediately activated the power of the heart treasure garment without hesitation. Part of the power entered his body to heal his injuries, while the other part covered his body to form a layer of protection. Sword 3 even charged forward to kill. The light trembled and Chen Zong flew back, as if he had been struck by lightning. The sword radiance also pierced through the barbarian flood dragon warrior's body, leaving behind a serious injury. However, it didn't kill him. Chen Zong couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He felt as if his organs had been shattered and his body was about to be torn apart. Even with such a dangerous attack, he still couldn't kill his opponent. The barbarian flood dragon warrior sneered. He ignored the sword wounds on his body and charged forward, wanting to kill Chen Zong. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.